Undaunted, unafraid, complete, Turner! This is 365 Sports.
Protection. There's the shot. Wide open. Blown coverage. Possibly a stumble. It's a house call. Touchdown, Kansas State.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Happy feet. Downfield. Caught. Broken tackle. Lassiter. Touchdown. Are you kidding me?
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Here's Jennings. He'll launch it downfield. Looking for Smith. It's caught. Touchdown SMU and Keyshawn Smith.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
It's King. Touchdown.
Now here's David Smoak and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on a new week as we have the first full week in the month of May. Good afternoon. I'm over here because we're in just the two tables set up. Paul out. He'll be back on Wednesday. Craig Smoak with me in studio. And here today, Garrett Ross and Andrew Valade. I've already been in touch and communicated and worked on an interview we did with Seth Emerson from theathletic.com with Emory Winter. So he's not in the studio, but also working his way through. What a weekend it was in sports with even horse racing and hockey, the Stanley Cup playoffs going in certain places crazy. We'll get to some of that to get off the beat a little bit, not quite off the radar, but have some fun with that. So, Craig, if you are a school that's in trouble or has been accused or you are under investigation and you want to self-report, which is, I don't know if Michigan did that. This is about the Connor Stallions story. Sherrone Moore, their head coach, got dinged by the NCAA, and he is going to set himself down for 2 games. However, he's picking which 2 games because in week number 2, they're playing at Oklahoma. And so he's going to suspend himself, or Michigan will. Your thought? I didn't know you get to choose where you wanted to sit out or not, but your thoughts about Sherrone Moore?
Yeah, I mean, he can choose what he wants because this is not the NCAA giving him punishment. This is him self-punishing, as you said. So that was probably the obvious reasoning behind choosing select games and not just getting, handed a punishment. So, yeah, that's pretty much off the top is that it's self-imposed sanctions. That's right there at the main headline of the story. So that's why it is stuttered versus it's game 1 and game 2, which is perhaps what the NCAA will maneuver back around on. I mean, who knows with them these days. But, yeah, I mean, he self-imposed sanctions for the Connor Stallions scandal, according to an ESPN report that had, I guess, their various sources behind the scenes. And he will be barred, according to the article, after also beyond missing weeks 3 and 4 against Central Michigan. Oh, no. And Nebraska, which, I mean, that's something. Yeah. But will be barred from any team-related duties during those weeks, will receive additional recruiting-related penalties. But again, they can still, being the NCAA, punish him further. So, yeah, this is just Michigan offering up their olive branch and hoping it will be enough to satisfy the NCAA and end this thing, basically, is how I read it. But we'll see what they have to say, and we should hear that before the start of the season. The reason this is being so widely talked about, of course, is because he didn't pick the Oklahoma game to mention when they go, to Norman there in week 2. He could have picked the very first game against New Mexico. So, yeah, sort of odd the way that they chose that. And, with Michigan, they got their national championship. So I don't think that they care too much about how people are going to pop on them for this story and jab them a little bit. I don't know how much they cared about the Connor Stallions thing, big picture, because everybody just sort of rolled their eyes and said, oh, well, we won the national championship. But damn, for a university that, portrays itself a certain way, they're sure involved in a lot of wacky stuff, aren't they? It's got a lot going on for Michigan men who don't do anything wrong. So, yeah, they stay in the headlines every few weeks. There's something it feels like. And so, yeah, that continues on.
He played football at OU, which I didn't know. I just saw that note. So he played at Oklahoma for a couple of 3 years in college, and then he finished up his career he started at Butler Community College and played at Oklahoma. So there's an emotional part of it there as well. West Virginia, Take Me Home Country Roads. They unveiled this earlier this afternoon.
63-48 victory in 1965. One of the greatest collegiate games of all time. Running back Garrett Marks and three-score.
They call it old gold and light blue, brought back to life. Ren Baker, the AD in the athletic department, unveiling the uniforms. I love them. What did you say, Garrett? Who'd they look like?
To me, it reminds me a lot of Notre Dame.
Back in the day of Notre Dame. And so West Virginia unveiling. I love uniform reveals. I don't like all the uniforms as they're revealed, but I do love that one. That if you're a West Virginia fan, either you like it or you don't. You understand it or you don't.
Like with any uniform, you like some of them and some of them you don't. I've seen a split opinion on this one. I think because it looks an awful lot like Pitt is the common criticism that I see, which is, an arch rival. So it's kind of weird to have a look that's so similar to them. It could be confused for them. But I love the Dune soundtrack, Wailing Woman in the background. You really feel the drama of that reveal. Feels like Timothée Chalamet should be walking across the desert with that woman wailing behind him. But that's a nice video, and I'm seeing a lot of people that do like them. But if there's a criticism, it is the fact that it looks similar to Pitt. So I don't know. On first glance, I liked them. I think they're cool. They kind of got a lot going on. The more I look at them, there's sort of like different shades, and so I don't know. I'll have to see them out on the field because that sometimes makes a big difference in your final decision. But on the surface, I like them okay, but I definitely understand those that are a little bit caught off guard by how much you look like your rival.
Well, Conundrum in the chat room goes, why are they wearing uniforms that look like Pitt? And
exactly,
there's a few others that mentioned that too. So there we are with West Virginia. Either as a fan, some love it, and then some may not. I don't know. I think the fact that they're doing something new is always pretty cool to me. A.J. Halsey, top safety based on most all of the ratings in the portal, has committed to play for Garrett Ross and LSU. He played at Houston, hell of a player, 32 starts, 74 tackles, 8 passes broken up, and 5 interceptions in his career at Houston, and he commits to Brian Kelly and also LSU. Mike Scarborough from Tiger Bait will join us later in the show today in the 5 o'clock hour.
Garrett, any thoughts on A.J. Halsey? I mean, I think he's a really good pickup. He was one of Houston's better players last year, and a really big loss, I felt like, for them in the portal, especially happening so late. So, there was tampering going on. Let's cut all the BS nowadays and just call it what it is. So, there's people looking to poach him, and I'm sure that was happening prior to his decision, and he was holding on to Houston. But I don't know, LSU too much to pass up on, I think, as an opportunity.
No, it is. I mean, I think it's good to bring him into the fold. They definitely need all the help they can get in the secondary. But at the same time, I find it funny how we talk about all the time, or there's a lot of this talk about players can't make – if you play in the Big 12, you're not good enough or whatever to go play at the next level. Well, he apparently is. So I'm interested to see what he can go out there and do. And I think he can ball out in Baton Rouge.
Well, yeah, that is the case that your conference is superior. But again, they're G5 players and FCS players that are being joining programs from the SEC, Big Ten, and elsewhere too. I knew about this young man, Aljur Miles II, commits to SMU, and look at the list that was reported that wanted him too. This is a stud of a player. I have a website, smoky.com. We have a team every year that I pick out of East and Central Texas. He was a part of that team. His head coach at Kaufman, I sent him a note. I said, what a great pickup for SMU. He goes, no doubt. 6'3", 210. Last year put up a lot of huge numbers. He is a catching, both receptions, yardage, and touchdown machine, and he commits to SMU.
Well, good pickup for SMU. I mean, getting a 4-star guy to add to the fold. I don't know much about this young man except for Kaufman doesn't really produce a lot of talent. So he's special in that regard that you got a guy that's a 4-star rated, and I don't know how many that Kaufman has had in their entire history that are 4-star rated. So that's pretty cool. And, just SMU continuing to ride that momentum from last year and build off of what Rhett Lashley's been doing the last few years. That's a really interesting program and one that's already surpassed expectations by making the playoff and being right there at the very end for the ACC championship. So they're going to keep adding talent and keep pouring money into that thing, and I think keep being relevant for quite a while.
All right, couple of kids from from Stanford are headed to play for BYU. The Bachmeier brothers are headed to play for Kalani Sitake, transferring from Stanford. Quarterback is Bear, and also a 2025 recruit who committed to Stanford at a high school, enrolled there earlier this spring. Now he's headed to BYU. So the brothers are both Bear and Tiger Bachmeier are headed to play for BYU.
You used to read Tiger Beat. Is that where you get confused there?
Yeah, it got me a little bit. Yeah,
you're a big Tiger Beat magazine.
Yeah,
fan.
I think I started looking at the ponytail, and it got me a little bit distracted.
I just want to know where, and I'm sure this joke's been made. I don't know. I just been saving it since last night. But where's their brother Lion to join the fray and be
early.
the Tiger, Lion, and Bear all joining BYU football? But this is cool to get a pair of brothers. Obviously, very smart young men. Being at Stanford and just not wanting to stick around to see what the post-Troy Taylor state of the program would look like, even though Andrew Luck's in there now. It's still very much in flux, so I don't blame them for looking around. So, they decided to jump in the portal, and don't blame anybody that's wooed by Kalani Sitake and what BYU's got going on right now. So you've got Bear, the quarterback, who is going to be competing to try and get some reps eventually once Jake Retzlaff rolls along. And then his brother Tiger there, who I guess was the second one to commit on Saturday, graduated from Stanford in 2.5 years with a computer science degree and will already be enrolling in a graduate program, expected to play right away. Hasn't had a lot of production, just a couple of touchdowns, less than 500 yards, less than 50 catches in 2 years, but he's got 2 years to play. So that could certainly spike up, and he's got some experience. So that's pretty cool. They've obviously got some talent in that family. Their brother Hank is a quarterback at Boise State, obviously, and then moved around a little bit after that. That's when I watched him most, though. But, that's pretty cool. They do have another brother I read in the article.
I was waiting for it to be like Leopard or something.
It wasn't
like that.
Lion. I don't know how Hank is just Hank.
Yeah, I know. It's
you got Lion Bear and Tiger, and then the fourth one apparently is what was that? Buck.
Yeah.
Buck, so Lion, Tiger, Buck, and Hank.
I would like to know if there was another feline animal, would be a name for a football player, a first name for a boy, who would it be? Lion wouldn't be. Lion's got a possibility. Leopard, you wouldn't be able to do that.
I don't really
Cheetah?
I don't really think there's one that's not like gaudy, like Cheetah or Lion or something super obvious like that. Tiger, I mean, there's Tiger Woods has kind of made that sort of normal. Bear, I've known a bear in my lifetime or two. So, yes,
Bear
Tiger,
Alexander,
Bear.
the young man who transferred like constantly throughout his career.
Who?
Bear Alexander. Remember him?
I wasn't even thinking about I was thinking about somebody from growing up. But, there's him as well. So, interesting family names, and looks like a nice little pickup there for BYU over the weekend.
We have new information. Scott Frost, who, of course, was at UCF, had a great run and then went to Nebraska, did not work out. I saw a good article written. I think Andrea Adelson sat down with him. His contract, the details came out. 5 years, $22.1 million, an option for the 6th year. And if you listen to him, and even if you kind of keep up with what it seemed like, he is in a very good place. Hopefully that's the case for UCF and for Scott Frost. But those are the details. Pretty good chunk, 5 years, $22.1 million.
Yeah, not bad for a second chance, and still not anywhere close to being like the top of the game by any means. So that seems pretty reasonable, and very interesting storyline among many in college football and many in just the Big 12 when it comes to the coaches in particular. So I'm intrigued. Consider me intrigued this offseason. Haven't heard much buzz about them, in terms of being a team and competitiveness in the Big 12 and all of that. I still expect them to be in the bottom half of the league, just not really sure where to place them at this point in time. But as far as the reunion goes, much like Rich Rod in Morgantown, I'm here for it, and I hope that it works out a lot better than the last time did. In some ways, like, you hope he wins as many games. You hope he just doesn't bolt after that. And you also hope that any personal issues that have plagued him at times, wherever he's been, are also fully out the window. They appear to be, and it's been awfully quiet in a good way. So I hope it stays that way.
Yeah, there's the story was the time at UCF, this time at UCF, Scott Frost won't need to catch lightning in a bottle. He goes over a lot of that. He had kind of told the writer, Andrea, they didn't want to talk much about Nebraska. I get that. He mentioned, I think, them in a way without mentioning his alma mater where he won a national title. Fran Brown seems to be very much always unique and looking at new things. He is signed with an NIL agency. NIL, of course, name, image, and likeness. We know that's not really what it is. It's paying players to come play for you. Social media has become a huge thing. He actually said, I figure there's no better time to do it than now. Network primarily works with high school and college athletes, including DJ Lagway, etc. When we started Network, that's the name of the NIL agency, we weren't pretending to nor considering to get into the coaching world, but now we do. Strong energy, essence that Fran brings to the table.
Yeah, I kind of am hesitant with just the feeling that there's always vultures swirling around college football these days and college sports in general, just looking where money can be made constantly and how can we, do something. And I don't know. I just feel like there's just a lot going on, obviously, to say the least. I mean, it's been the case now for a couple of years. So I every time I see NIL, just kind of like always half roll my eye. This one, though, it did catch my attention because it is different. It is a coach involved, and I haven't really thought about coaches getting involved in NIL or anything like that. And yet, why wouldn't they? It makes a ton of sense too, and there's big opportunities there. So I'm curious as to how they go about doing that. He's obviously built up a nice little social media following. I think the thing I'm most hesitant about is I understand companies leveraging people for their social media. I also do think, though, it's unintentionally led to a lot of really bad social media because people are just doing anything to try to please the algorithm and get hits. And so for every celebrity that's used it like to promote this whatever, Gatorade, and that's great. And you get that. And you're like, yeah, I get why they're being paid for that. There's some Yahoo making up some story about something other that's just, totally off the rails. And so the whole social media hits for money thing, I think, kind of ruined social media in some ways. But I think there's guys like him that use it in a very interesting way. And if I'm a company, I would be intrigued by that as well and just what he brings to the table. So, yeah, it makes a lot of sense to have coaches involved. I hadn't thought about that. And he's certainly somebody that thinks very interesting and unique. And that's a good move, in my opinion, on that company's part to get him involved and see what they can create.
The chief strategy officer, Doug Scott, told Front Office Sports it really was the energy and the essence of who Fran was to where we decided, yes, this is somebody we want to be successful. And we think there's a little bit of a void in the marketplace right now. He also your philosophy is you should complete college and get your degree in 3 years. So he's kind of a unique in how he thinks. I think it's cool. Good for Fran Brown. Hopefully we'll get him on. We've been told we would, but at some point between now and the summer.
Yeah, and we've seen Deion doing commercials, and Nick Saban obviously has been doing that for a long time, various others as well. So I don't know what it means for him to be involved in NIL and what that actually looks like, but to that press releases statement, I do think Fran Brown's somebody who's just naturally interesting. He's not trying to be interesting for the sake of getting attention, if that makes sense, which is what I'm kind of getting at with social media. Like, he's not somebody who, when I see him advertising for something, I'm going to be like, he's totally full of it. He doesn't use that, or he's not a fan of that. Like, I'll believe it versus a lot of sometimes the influencer stuff that you see. So I like that move.
I absolutely agree. Ross Tellinger had this out earlier today. NCAA, and this kind of cracked me up, and we're not going to go down the rabbit hole of House versus NCAA settlement, but you know the story. There's this settlement. Judge Wilkin has looked at it multiple times and sent people back to the timeout corner to fix it, and basically told the Power 4 conferences and also the NCAA, bring it back. You have 14 days, which is counting and getting close to the end of that, and make sure that you grandfather in the roster limits. You don't just go straight to 105 and a bunch of young men and women in sports lose their scholarships and opportunity. Ross Dellinger saying that the power conferences voluntarily grandfather in roster spots, but questions loom on the move that may impact budgets, etc. The NCAA and power conferences continue to take steps towards permitting schools at their discretion. That's the part that is kind of a key here, to grandfather in roster spots. I saw the response to this, which usually when Ross or anyone else has stories, this is from Philip Shang. They can plan as much as they want, but I guarantee the objectors filed the NCAA's proposal upon receipt. If Kessler and Berman joined they're the ones that made the lawsuit or came up with the lawsuit representing everybody, join the NCAA in submitting something so facially deficient to Judge Wilkin, she's going to bring the hammer down. When the judge tells you to do something, you do it. So there we are with a response to that, as if they're going to be the ones that, okay, this is what we either can or can't. It's up to the schools if they want to grandfather in any kind of roster limits. We'll see. That 14 days, that thing's coming up, I think, pretty soon on the deadline for them to get back to Judge Wilkin. Hey, over the weekend, Texas baseball has been great. They'd won every series throughout the year. In the SEC, they still are leading the SEC. They got swept by Arkansas. And it's a great 3-game sweep for Arkansas, but the latest college baseball rankings, Texas, because those around them were okay or not great, remain number 1 in the country. Florida State, Paul's excited. The Seminoles at 2. LSU lost 2 out of 3 to A&M. There's Arkansas, who swept Texas at 7. Then you look down at number 12, there's West Virginia running away with the Big 12. And then at 22, there are the Wildcats of Arizona. So that's the updated version of college baseball's top 25.
Well, it's nice to be able to get swept and not move off your perch at number 1 because of what happened around you. So that's pretty sweet. And what an impressive weekend for Arkansas to be able to go take down what has been the juggernaut of college baseball this season multiple times. That's an impressive series win by the Piggies, no doubt about it. Florida State, we know Paul's grand goal, his big goal would be what's left remaining that he hasn't seen would be Florida State winning a baseball title. Maybe this year's the year. Who knows? Maybe this will be the year, but they're certainly in the mix for it. Great for the state of Oregon to have 2 teams in the top 10. ACC representing really well. Big 12, not impressive, not very good. Luckily, Arizona's in there as well, so it's not just West Virginia by their lonesome. But you see, like in things like this, where I know that, certain things have gotten better in the last year because of a dedication to it that maybe wasn't there prior, or just the changing of scenery or whatever. But this is another sport where you do feel the loss of a Texas and or Oklahoma a bit more. And so, great season for the Longhorns. I think anything but a natty will be a disappointment, but they've been awfully impressive despite this past weekend.
I have a friend of mine I play golf with, Blake Browder, who's a UT alum, and he thought last week they would lose the series to A&M. Those 3 games were all one-run score games for Texas. He missed it by a weekend. Couple of logos that you may not know, that number 13 is UC Irvine. We've mentioned them before. And 19 is Troy, who is inside the top 20 at number 19. So good for them. Big 12 baseball standings, by the way. West Virginia, 2 games up in the win column, 4 up in the loss column, ahead of Arizona State. Kansas and Arizona are in that top 4. So there we are with that. And TCU also is in that top 5.
That's been one area where Texas Tech's money hasn't really come into, or their typical traditional winning or culture, like in softball.
They won their first ever softball title.
Yeah, I mean but they went out right and they got the pitcher this offseason, right? And went and invested, and there was the big to do about that at the time, and that obviously paid off. Basketball, they've been good in that for a while. Football, we'll see this season, but there's certainly about as much momentum for them there as there is anywhere. So point being, it's just surprising that baseball is just kind of an afterthought, because that's sort of been one of their mainstays these last several years is how good that baseball program has been. And they're just sort of in the middle this year. And I know we had our guest on last week that explained a bit as to
he's going to be on Wednesday, by the way.
But yeah, that's just something that I noticed. I just expected them, I guess, to kind of be right there in the mix, and instead, yeah, it's West Virginia, it's the Arizona schools, it's KU, it's TCU, and so on. So West Virginia having a heck of a year.
Texas Tech's baseball team from 14 to 19 with the 4 College World Series, 14, 16, 18, and 19. Tadlock's been there for 13 years. Couple of other notes to get to. When it comes to some of the stories we have, we will hear from Ari Temkin today at 4:40. Lathan Wissington, it's a local young man from Midway High School. He has gone to various camps. He's only a junior this coming year. He has offers from everywhere, like basically everywhere. He won the MVP at the Rivals camp. Very quiet. His brother's a safety playing college football. Very quiet. He's a man-child. I'll never forget when Shane Anderson, the former Midway coach, told me about Lathan Wissington. He played a little bit as a freshman, Craig. You remember him? Last year played a lot, was a great player. He is going all of these camps around the country, winning the MVP, and he won that MVP, the Rivals Camp Series, over the weekend. And he's just a kid, but he's built like a man.
Yeah, he's a very good player. He's got a lot of offers, as you mentioned. I know we were talking last season about A&M having offered him during that stretch of the actual football year, and then plenty of others came in after that as well. He's just a young man with still a couple of years left, as you mentioned, so he's only going to get bigger, stronger, faster, all that, but he's already pretty good in all those areas, and I think he's a heck of a player. I don't know that he's like some surefire 5-star type guy. I'm not a scout, don't pretend to be one either, but I know he's very good. I'd be surprised if he's not a firm 4-star when that all becomes very apparent and clear in the the evolution of his career there as he gets into his junior year. But he's got the offer list that tells you he's pretty good, and he's got the film that tells you he's pretty good, and that would be a great get for Oregon, Texas Tech, or whoever ends up with him. Texas Tech, that's a little bit of a Central Texas connection because of the staff, although that's not quite what it was, but they obviously had their connections they built while some of them were in Waco, and that's paying off right here with a local kid. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him head out to Lubbock with what they've got going on, but he'll have his pick of the litter, that's for sure.
Now, I like to share good stories when we get them. We hope all of them are, but we know they're not. B.J. Thompson, he was with the Kansas City Chiefs and, of course, suffered a cardiac arrest. The Chiefs plan to bring him back on IR so he can remain under the care of the team's physicians. Went into cardiac arrest after that seizure during the team meeting last year. The Chiefs plan to help Thompson recover whether or not he decides to return to play in the NFL. And that is a story. You hear a lot of times the cold-blooded realities of players getting cut, waived, injured, whatever. There are ways to still get money and have some treatment, but this is a pretty good story for PJ. That's a great story for B.J. Thompson.
Yeah, I don't know how often that happens elsewhere, but that's a cool thing for the Chiefs to do. I would hope that it's pretty common, that we just don't maybe hear about it as often. But BJ was at Baylor for a while. It's how we first initially knew him, then transferred out, went to SFA, and eventually got himself into the NFL. So a guy who I know Matt Rule really prized when he was starting to build the program up at Baylor, and he was looking for big-time athletes and skill sets that translated to the NFL, and BJ was one of the clear examples of a guy who maybe was a bit raw and maybe didn't have like the tape necessarily, but you saw a lot of just the physical tools that would translate to being a guy the NFL would have interest in eventually, and so they clearly did, and unfortunately health has created a situation where he can't just go out and play football, but it's great that the Chiefs are being supportive and that he's got an army of support around him to help him get better and get healthy. That's all that matters in the end. So that's great.
I remember when he was a part of those early years of Rule, and he talked about special teams being a big deal, which at Nebraska has been a nightmare. They're trying to tidy that up. He blocked a field goal early on in his career at Baylor. And then this is Garrett. Go ahead. You want to add to that?
I was going to say, I'm not trying to talk Texas Tech all the time today, but a lot of those I don't know about a lot, but some of those guys that were identifying players like him are at Texas Tech, and you see, a lot of the pub they're getting for the talent they have on campus right now. And so a guy who was identified early on. They just kind of saw the measurements and some of the drill work and things like that, and could project him to being an NFL talent. And I think that's something you'll see with Texas Tech and Nebraska as well in the coming years.
All right. So, Garrett, this is your floor. We will have Bruce Levine, who's the Stars radio analyst, after what they did on Saturday night, where I whelped when I saw what was it. Got a text from Jennifer late into the evening. Well, the Stars are doing what they always do. They're choking away. Game 7 at home. They were down 2-0. And I think about 8 minutes left, Garrett. Am I right?
It was about 8 minutes,
and that's like being down 30-0 in a football game. And tell us what happened, Mr. Ross.
So about that time, Mikko Rantanen comes down, and he gets the first goal for Dallas. He puts them on the board. Then they find themselves a little later in a situation where he finds his second goal. Then they come out and they're able to draw a penalty, and they get on the power play. Wyatt Johnson takes advantage of the power play off of a corner pass from Matt Duchene. He gets it in there. And then on an open goal at the very end of the game, Rantanen gets loose. It caps off a hat trick to seal the victory. Remarkable. Dallas had no business winning that game, and they honestly do not get past the series with Colorado without Mikko Rantanen in the lineup.
It was amazing. It really was amazing. One note about Jennifer, she had some major dental surgery on Thursday, and she told me that she was screaming so loud, which is not very smart when your jaws are locked and unlocked, whatever, because of the surgery. But she lost her mind, and they came back. He is now 9-0. Pete DeBoer, 9-0 in game 7 wins.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are closeout wins, no matter which round it is. But the Stars now will play the Winnipeg Jets. We'll have Bruce Levine on the show later on today to talk about what was a miraculous comeback. Winnipeg, by the way, scored with how much time left? Just a little hockey note. 1.6 seconds or so. They scored to force overtime, and they win. They'll play Dallas in the next round. And then one other note. Now, we'll do this later, Garrett. We'll do this a little bit later on. So there we are with many things in the world of sports. And Craig, anything else you'd like to add from the weekend of what caught your attention?
No, I think you pretty well covered it all. Great win by the Stars, as you said. Rantanen against his old team, being able to dig them out of their grave and go play spoiler there in the final few minutes was pretty cool to see that. I'm not going to pretend like I'm going to go jump on the Stars bandwagon. If I'm a fan of anybody, it's the Stars. I'm not going to get like stolen valor here, though, but I'm hoping for them to go hoist the cup, and it looked very much in doubt until they just flipped that switch there late in that game, and very cool moment for the home crowd. They were just going nuts, as you might imagine, and that was a lot of fun. So, yeah, I think a lot of people were screaming on Saturday in the state of Texas for the Stars. That was pretty cool.
I think the last time that I actually squealed during a moment in sports was when Nebraska hosted Colorado last fall, and they had Tommy Hill picked off that pass from Shedeur early and ran it back because I just hadn't seen that moment in a long, long time, and I just reacted like that. And so, yeah, Garrett?
I was going to say, before we go, I got 2 super chats I want to throw up.
Okay, good. All right, thank you very much. Retired stockbroker and also Kim Coulter. Yes, thank you very much. This Saturday will be the Texas High School Football Hall of Fame induction ceremony here in Waco, and I am honored to be a part of that class that also includes names like Patrick Mahomes and RG3, Brad Gable. We'll have a few of those, at least 1 or 2 of those names on the show possibly this week. So there we are. Thank you for the super chats on that. Thanks to Michael Haig, who wrote an article in today's Waco Tribune. I do appreciate him doing all that. All right, when we come back, we'll hear from Ari Temkin. Also today, Seth Emerson on the SEC. They are deep, they are loaded, but yet they do also seem to be, because they have teams at the very top, like it was Alabama for a long time, or it was, of course, back in the day, LSU, of course, with Burrow. But are they loaded again? And yet there are 2 teams that look like they're above the rest in both Texas and Georgia, just like last year. This is 365 Sports. PettyClinicalOT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man that you want to be, need to be, used to be. How? If you have symptoms where you feel like as you've gotten into your mid to upper 40s and you just don't feel right, your energy's not the same, your sleep habits are not the same, and you still are fit, or you're in pretty good shape, or your diet is pretty good and exercise, whatever, but it's just not the same. It could be your testosterone level that fights against all of that. So Dr. Petty, contact them, pettycliniclowt.com. Tell them what's going on, and it's for men, and he will then set you up to get your blood work. Take care of that for you. You get the blood done. He gets the results. He'll give you the results. He'll get back with you. If your testosterone level has dropped too low, he can put you in a program to increase your testosterone level so you can become the high-performance man that you want to be, need to be, used to be at pettycliniclowt.com.
I'll never get used to this. I'll never get used to this. This is how I want to live. Everything I I'll never get used to this. I'll never get used to this.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Whatever it is you wrangle, whatever seeds you sow, no matter what you nurture or what you choose to grow, at Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, we're proud to protect all Texans.
The Jeep Celebration event is on at Allen Samuels in Waco. Get the luxurious 2024 Jeep Grand Wagoneer with a huge $13,000 dealer discount plus 0% financing. Or take home a 2024 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, $15,000 off or 0% for 72 months. Plus, drive a 2025 Jeep Compass for just $25,900. Big savings, legendary Jeeps. Only at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Come by. Let's be friends.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
You just saw that commercial from Allen Samuels, and we're waiting on Ari Temkin. We'll get him from the Big 12 Network momentarily. I have to tell this story. So I'm driving a 2025 Charger Daytona RT Blacktop. I have been stopped. It's not mine. My car's being fixed because the tailgate wouldn't come up in the Ford Explorer. I have had, and I mean this even more recently, at a fast food drive-thru to get a drink. I had a young man walk up to me and go, "Man, what kind of car is that? Is that new?" They know. If you know hot rod cars, they know. It is phenomenal. I've been driving around. I've had people stop me in the parking lot, stop me at where I was going to get gas, because I'm too dumb to know it's an electrical car. I actually was going to pump it with gas, and then I realized it's electrical. This thing is unbelievably loaded. Thanks to Alan Samuels for letting me drive it around for a few days until my Ford Explorer is back. 2025 Charger Daytona RT Blacktop electrical. Like when you start it, you know it's there. And so I wanted to thank Ted Teague and the great people at Alan Samuels for that, helping me out have some wheels while the other one's getting fixed.
Yeah, put in the promo code GoDogs for
Georgia. I wasn't going to say that.
Georgia season tickets.
Right, I did. Everybody that has asked me about the car, I will say this, is probably under 25. I just randomly walking up
because there's
to
not
me.
people older that are trying to maneuver around and do what that car can do. But yeah, it's a sweet looking car. I didn't know it was electric. That's interesting. But yeah, I'm not surprised you're getting stopped and people inquiring about what exactly model wise it is and all of that. It's pretty cool. It's definitely a different ball game than a Ford Explorer. So any thoughts about trading it off and just rolling with it full time?
No. I made my last payment on the Ford Explorer about 2 months ago. Now I'm having to pay for this lift gate to get fixed, which is always the case, right? You all of a sudden are done with a loan, you pay it off, and then your washer and dryer go out or something like that. But no, I'm not going to do that. No, it's two-door. That's the other thing. It's a two-door. I'm not good in two-doors because that means I got to kind of bend down to get in, and I'm not in that position.
Well, it's very easy to see if you're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old and making a lot of NIL money and probably have a deal with a car dealership discount or something like that on a lease. It's definitely a car you could see yourself jumping into and having a lot of fun in, and potentially getting into trouble if you're not smart enough to know how to handle all that. So yeah, that's a cool looking car.
Yeah, then no question. And it is really nice. Garrett?
I just sent him a text. I'm waiting.
Okay. All right. So appreciate again. It's a dude. The young man just a minute ago, like an hour or so ago, when he goes, hey, can you turn it off and turn it on again? Because I mentioned when you turn it on, the neighborhood knows you're turning on your car. I always thought that when you did that and you heard that, I always thought that was just somebody pushing the gas while it was in park, but that's not the case.
I don't know why. I'm just shocked you didn't know that's just a car starting up.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know. Well, I mean, I've never driven one of those before. I've driven a Challenger, but I don't remember it doing that. As they let me drive that around for a weekend.
I hear it in my neighborhood constantly of those big trucks starting up in certain times, all the same time. So I know this guy's going to work, I guess, or I assume that's what he's doing every night at like 2 a.m. when the starts up. So yeah, that's just a car starting up. It's got a strong engine on it. That's all. Not revving it necessarily. There's a little bit of a different tune when you do that.
Paxton goes, how fast does it go? I have not done that. I have not taken it on the highway, and it does have a push button where it says boost. You understand what that probably means. You could be going down the highway, you push it, and you're going down the highway twice as fast as you were in the first place. So it's not my car, so I don't feel like I should do that.
Or that just turns on like another light or something. Right? I have no idea. But yeah, just got that boost button that takes off like it's a freaking Fast and Furious movie. That's pretty cool too, I guess. I'd be a little bit leery of it myself.
Barry Crawford, it's okay. The Charger's available as a hybrid. So some do take gas. But this was electrical. So I went to Walmart and they've got those pumps or whatever you call them, chargers that go like 2 or 3 times faster. And it didn't take long. I just walked into Walmart for about 15 minutes, came out, and it was charged completely. Nothing yet? Interesting. Okay, that's fine. All right, let me ask you that. We're going to get to later in the show, Joe Klatt. Everybody has their post-spring way too early. Way too early would be right after the championship game that was won by Ohio State. Top 25s. Is it obviously more difficult now to do any type of preseason, anything, no matter what time of year it is, mainly because of the transfer portal, or is there another reason why it makes it difficult?
What about if I don't think it's difficult? How about that? At this point, pretty much everything is known. There's nothing outside of a Nico type move, and there was only that Nico type move that really changes things all that drastically. So, you say it's too early. It's just fresh off. The championship game was 4 months ago at this point. So it's been a whole offseason block of activity and full spring practices coming and going and portal opening and closing and all that jazz for weeks now. So I think you pretty much now know who teams are. So no, I don't think it's too early by any means. I think there might be a surprise or two this summer, but nothing outside of just something completely like gobsmacking you out of nowhere that should significantly change any team that's out there. I mean, we pretty much know everything about everybody now. The portal's closed. There's stragglers, but I don't think anybody that's being picked up right now is much of a difference maker. I think you can get enough guys to in totality, they add up maybe this spring portal and make a big difference for you. But I mean, again, outside of an outlier like the Nico situation, I feel like everybody's pretty much got the best players locked down and everybody's rosters have settled down, and yeah, everything's where it should be. So there will be probably new information, media days wise, little interesting things that maybe tickle your fancy and maybe make you think a certain way about a certain team that you didn't otherwise. But for the most part, now is about when you'd start to see preseason polls that I actually think have some brains behind them and aren't just necessarily clickbait like right after the national championship game when there are a lot of unknowns. Now there's not many in the way of unknowns.
Will there be a team, Garrett or Craig, that is Arizona State this year? Will there be somebody? I think the answer, I don't know about getting that deep into the postseason, but I think that's going to be the case annually. You're going to always like TCU a couple of years ago and then Arizona State with what they did.
I mean, I don't know. I think that was a very rare thing and just unique to itself. I don't think that's somehow like this is going to happen every year. There's going to be a team picked last and they finish first. I think that was just unique to itself and doesn't necessarily need to be well, who's this year's Arizona State now moving forward? There might be an Arizona State-like story where somebody's picked lower and finishes higher than expected, but I don't think that's going to happen in the SEC. I don't think like Vandy or Arkansas or someone like that's going to jump up and go win the league. Maybe in Oklahoma with all their moves make like a big leap, but I think people are going to account for that and they're not going to be now down towards the bottom. They're going to be more in the middle at worst. So I don't know how much of a huge jump they could really make. And the Big 12, I mean, it would be the equivalent of probably like Houston or somebody jumping up or Arizona maybe. Mm-hmm. I don't see that. I mean, it's possible, I guess. I just don't think that every year there's now going to be, because Arizona State did it, there's going to be an Arizona State. So it's possible.
If you get the right quarterback. Right.
Yeah. And that was unique too. I mean, Sam Levitt was a really good player. So I don't think that there's going to be many bottom of the barrel teams that are going to go pick up a potential soon to be NFL first round pick type of guy. Kenny Dillingham could do that, but not most teams in my estimation. If I had to guess. So yeah, I don't know that there'll be that big of a surprise, but it's college football. There will be plenty of surprises, just maybe not that extreme.
We'll get Ari. He forgot. Okay. He was in the middle of something else, but at the same time. So can you have an Arizona State story inside the Big Ten or the SEC?
The Big Ten probably, because I think you could make an argument that we saw that last year in the Big Ten with Indiana.
Yeah.
All right. With everything that happened. And honestly, I think if it's going to happen, it's more than likely going to be the Big Ten who does it, where more than likely you're going to have Ohio State in the mix. Oregon's going to be in the mix. Penn State or another program will always be in the mix. I think you're vying for, do they get 4 in? And if they do, is it somebody like USC that finally gets better? Is it somebody like Illinois, that's got somebody coming in? And I think that's the conference where you could see the most logical chance of that happening, in my opinion.
But in the SEC, there's also enough teams that have been good. Ole Miss has been flirting, but they weren't able to close out. But if you say that in the SEC, then you're looking at like maybe Vanderbilt doesn't just upset one team; they win a lot more. South Carolina now has enough hype around them that wouldn't be shocking. It would have to be a Mississippi State, someone like that, and I just don't see that happening. But when the quarterback can change a team the way that Levitt or others can change a team, and then you get on the right side of a schedule, who knows? Maybe you can. You guys don't quite agree with me on that, but I don't see it happening in the SEC. I don't think.
What do I not agree with you on?
You don't think, you thought that Arizona State was more of the exception.
Yeah, I mean, I said that could happen. I don't foresee it happening. I don't think anybody's going to be picked 16th in the Big 12 and finish first this year. I think that was an outlier. I don't think that's now a yearly occurrence is what I was saying. Okay. So I think it's possible. I just don't assume that somebody's going to do that this year. So yeah, I mean, your guess is as good as mine. I just feel like in the Big 12, Arizona State was more a product of just nobody really knowing anything about them, looking at their roster, not knowing much about it, and just not expecting them to be able to hit the ground running the way that they did. So, I think now everybody's seen everybody in that league. There's not going to be like some grand surprise of, like we mentioned, Houston or someone like that running through the league like Arizona State did last year. That would be shocking if they did that. When Arizona State did it, it was shocking that they did it because they were picked 16th. But then when you watch them, you're like, oh, well, nobody really knew how good they were to begin with. So it's not shocking they won because they were the bad news Bears. It's just that nobody really had a clue how good they actually were because they were brand new to the league for the most part. And the voters, I don't think, really had them in any position but 4th out of 4 when it came to the Pac-12 schools. So yeah, that disrespect or just complete lack of knowledge, I don't think is going to be the case because realignment has allowed everybody to have a year of familiarity.
I think lack of knowledge is more than you're right. That's what I did. I was like, and then I didn't give Levitt enough credit, etc. They lost 2 games. They lost at Tech. They lost at Cincinnati by 8 and also 10. Ari Temkin, Big 12 Radio, joins us on 365 Sports. Hey, man, appreciate your time. We were discussing in this day and age of the transfer portal, is it more likely to see an Arizona State type run? And would it be in the SEC? Will we ever see something like that? Or was this just maybe the exception and a one-off? I don't know.
I mean, look, I think what we've seen in this conference is a lot of parity. And so in some ways, while Arizona State was extremely hard to predict because everybody thought they'd finish at the bottom of the league, and from a personnel standpoint, there was just so many unknowns, we're also not unused to seeing this. I mean, go back and look a couple of years ago, an Oklahoma State team that nobody predicted, to finish at the top of the league ended up playing for a Big 12 championship. And I mean, it's become commonplace, go back even years before that, where we see teams that shouldn't be there competing towards the top of the conference. And I mean, even BYU last year, right? I mean, Arizona State gets sort of all the credit because they won it. But I mean, look, BYU had a resume where they probably should have been considered greater than they were for the college football playoff. So, I mean, BYU and Arizona State were 2 teams that nobody really predicted last year that came out of nowhere to have the seasons they ended up having. And, and Arizona State stands out. So, my vantage point of this, guys, is that this is what we're going to see until proven incorrect. We have to expect that every year there's going to be pretty significant turnover and parity in this league. And look, I mean, at this point, I'm trying to figure out who that team is going to be this upcoming season, because I think we know who will be at the top, and we can always go back on like, well, it'll be, Texas Tech and Baylor and Iowa State and Arizona State and probably BYU. Like, those are the teams in the preseason that should be towards the tops. Many of the teams that finished at the top of the standings. But like, again, if any other season has been any indication, like, look at where the top 5 was in the preseason last year versus where the top 5 finished. And, will it be as crazy as it was last season? Probably not. But at the same time, like, this is a league of parity. Until proven otherwise, it's going to remain a league of parity.
Ari, Texas Tech is, I guess you could give them the trophy for like the off-season champs, right? I think in the Big 12 and maybe in college football, depending on what category you're talking about. But who beyond them has had the most interesting offseason up to this point in your estimation when it comes to the league and the changes made or decisions made?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think Arizona State, because they didn't have to add a ton, but where they did. I mean, they basically return Arizona State 11 of the 12 starters, and then they bring in Army's running back to kind of take the place of Cam Scadaboo. And I think, that'll be a different look. I'm really intrigued by BYU. I mean, because they lost a decent amount, but then also added a ton, including, Utah transfer Keanu Tanavasa. And they have a ton of guys that they got defense. They're going to play into how good that defense is going to be. K-State has added along their offensive line. And of late too, they added 2, spring portal guys along the offensive line, including a 6'5", 326-pound tackle from Penn State who played, JB Nelson, who played in 3 playoff games last year. So just kind of going down. I mean, West Virginia and UCF with 2 new coaches that have been there before, but those are intriguing. How about, Cincinnati added a late addition to the transfer portal at left tackle, and, Chris Hummer, our buddy from 24/7 Sports, had it as the number one spring, spring transfer portal edition, because you just don't see left tackles like that available in the portal. So yeah, I mean, I think you're right. How about, I'm just going through in my head now, Connor Wegman at Houston at the quarterback position. I think that was a huge addition. And Houston, by the way, has the number one quarterback in the state of Texas, a 5-star coming out next year, out of the Houston area. I think he's out of Katy, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, I mean, I look up and down. I think there's a ton of intriguing additions. I haven't even touched on Baylor, and a team that was as good as any team in college football last year when the season ended. And what have they done to kind of, solidify things around Sawyer Robertson, especially up front? So I think there's a lot to be intrigued by in this conference. This is a conference that, just saw a guy in AJ Halsey go out the door to go to LSU. So sometimes you're going to lose some of your, top flight players in Halsey leaving Houston to go to LSU. But for the most part, this is a league that's going to add talent from other conferences, add talent from lesser levels.
Does it also intrigue you this year because the quarterback, the depth of the quarterbacks and how good they all, not all, but I mean, even Wigman at Houston gets a chance to do something there. And some of the guys coming back that were good last year, can they be as good this year with Retzlaff, or Levitt? Are they going to take the next step, or was that just a year? The year before that, Levitt was at Arizona State, they had 8 touchdown passes, 14 picks. He had 24 and 6, a massive difference. Can they get that kind of play again from those same guys?
Yeah, I mean, I believe so. I mean, going back to your question, Smokey. So we talked about this on our show the other day, and basically, like, if you looked at the accumulation of quarterback talent in this conference, is the SEC or the Big Ten any better? I'd argue that the closest second is the Big Ten. And even then, I mean, you're looking at a bunch of newcomers. I mean, Drew Aller is back. But beyond that, like, you got a bunch of young players at Michigan, at Ohio State, young quarterbacks that are stepping into big roles. UCLA, he's Nico Iamaleava, who, we know about all the offseason drama with him. So, like, the Big Ten has a lot of talent, but it's young and inexperienced talent. You look at the SEC and, like, you lose a Jalen Milroe. Now Garrett Nussmeier's back at LSU, so that's a top flight guy. DJ Lagway at Florida is another guy, but like, I'm just top to bottom, the Big 12 has the best accumulation of quarterbacks in the nation, and this is not something we've seen in I can remember. I mean, last year going into the season, I would argue that the Big 12 had the best running back grouping of any of the conferences, but not quarterback. And yeah, I mean, you look at Levitt, you look at Robertson and how he finished up the season last year. And again, hopefully it's not all on him like it appeared to be at points last year, whether it be running or throwing the football. And I think guys emerged. But Baron Morton is in line to have a big year at Texas Tech. They think they finally have an offensive line to help and, a defense that could stop some people. Rocco Becht is kind of under the radar as a guy that helped to lead Iowa State, to a Big 12 championship appearance. And, he's only getting better and improving. Jalen Daniels is far down this list and is a guy that was, a Heisman Trophy hopeful a few years back. And so now he's back with a guy that he's comfortable with, this offensive coordinator, and Jim Zebrowski. There's plenty I'm probably leaving out. Connor Wegman's a guy that comes in with a ton of upside. Remember, like, Houston was a major surprise story last year. I love Devin Dampier at Utah, maybe because you expect that Utah will still have a good defense. Dampier comes in with his offensive coordinator, and so now he's got a quarterback that understands his system. So that'll be a really intriguing. Noah Fafita's a guy that was thought of as one of the best quarterbacks in the conference coming into the season last year, and he took a step back, but does he get back to where he was a couple of years ago? I'm a big fan of Hoss Haney, who transferred from TCU as a big recruit now to Oklahoma State. Now, I'm not sure that he'll start, but I think he's probably their best option at starting. Yeah. So, and then Caden Salter or Juju Lewis at Colorado. Salter is a guy that's experienced, that maybe looking at kind of being a one-year bridge quarterback for Colorado. And, and then Juju Lewis is a guy that is a true freshman that is a 5-star, that high expectations. Brennan Sorsby, I think, was really under the radar last year, had a really good start to the season and then really petered off. I don't know if he had an injury or something happened, because he was running the ball a lot more than he was throwing in the second half of the season. So yeah, I mean, when I look up and down this conference is loaded with quarterback talent and probably the best in the country. And that's not something that we've seen ever. I didn't mention Retzlaff. I didn't mention Avery Johnson, who is a 5-star, who has a lot of expectations. And yeah, I mean, has the potential for Sam Levitt to take another step and become a top 10 pick. So ultimately, I think this conference has everything in terms of dual threat guys, top 10 pick potential guys, and then young players looking to emerge.
Texas Tech is all in. Are you all in on Texas Tech?
It's hard not to be, right? Because this part of the year, what are you looking at? You're looking at like raw talent and what we know. So, I mean, their biggest deficiencies of the last few years is defense, and particularly on their offensive and defensive lines. Well, they poured a bunch of money into that. I mean, and their offensive line, they've got 6 guys that could start for them that have already started a handful of games over 1 or 2 seasons on an offensive line. So, like, that's huge, right? And then defensive line, I mean, they had a great defensive line portal before the spring entry, and then they added David Bailey, who's arguably the best defensive lineman that they signed from Stanford, who's a big-time pass rusher. Lee Hunter is an interior guy that they signed from UCF. So Skylar Gale-Howard's another guy that they signed from the portal that should be a monster. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard not to. Now, in watching Baron Morton last year, I thought that he at times looked to be kind of a system quarterback. I thought Zach Kitley put him in situations to where he was making easy throws on easy reads that helped him out in situations. And when the ball was put in his hands, he didn't really make plays to help them win games a ton. Now, again, I think their offensive line struggled. I think their defense was a big issue. So you're trying to make up for a lot when you're a quarterback under those circumstances.
And also injured, yeah.
Yeah, right. And that too, right? The shoulder injury. But he did start 12 games, which was the number one thing that Texas Tech needed coming into the season. They'd not had a quarterback start every game for them in a season since Pat Mahomes did it. So, they at least got that monkey off their back, despite Morton still suffering some injuries last year, probably due to their offensive line. So, I mean, I think, when he's got to do a lot less this year, that should help. Now, with that being said, like, they brought in Sheil Wood from Houston, who's the new defensive coordinator, who I love. I think it's a great hire. But then you lose Kitley, and so you bring in another, Mac Leftwich steps in as offensive coordinator, which that could be good. But like, we know they've upgraded a defensive coordinator. We don't know where they are at offensive coordinator in terms of an upgrade, because they lost their guy because their guy was really good, who's now the head coach at Florida Atlantic. So, yes, to me, they're with a handful of teams that I'm picking preseason to be the top of the conference. But I think like expectations, and I'm sure expectations were like this at Waco, like for Tech, they've got to play for a Big 12 championship, I think, at a minimum. Now, there's obviously the context of what happens over the course of the season. Does Morton get hurt? They've got Will Hammond behind him, who's a big-time recruit out of the Austin area, but he's still young and still learning. So, I mean, how much leeway do they get if Morton gets hurt? Like, there's obviously important context. You can't just say before the season, like, they've got to do this without adding some context. But, like, yeah, I think most fans, and I'd imagine most fans of Waco feel the same way. Like, you got to get to the Big 12 championship game this year.
Which team, if they don't down to the last weekend or two, aren't in the mix, will be the big disappointment? Is there like, you don't know, because we just discussed, that's why we talk about the Big 12. But which one? Is it K-State? Is it Tech? That if they're not in the last weekend or two, then they have to feel like, man, are we going to get back there? Tech would like just to get there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tech, I think K-State, because it would mean that maybe they didn't have the season they thought they would with Avery Johnson. But I go back to Arizona State. As I mentioned at the front end of this interview, like, this is a league of parity, and that's not good for the league. I think the league needs a team to emerge, to become top heavy. Arizona State could be one of those teams. We talked about this after TCU went to the national championship. You need to see some consistency at the top of the conference, because, for a while, this conference was judged by Texas and OU and then how teams performed against Texas and OU. Well, without that litmus test, who's that team? Right. So, and perception matters here, guys. Like, BYU did not get in based on perception. They weren't even part of the conversation. And when you go look at it, like, that's ridiculous. They should have been part of the conversation based on what they did, but there's just no big time brand that's won consistently that you could measure yourself against. Fair, unfair, whatever. Like, that's the reality of the situation. BYU should have been much more a part of the playoff conversation than they actually were, based on the resume, and they weren't because of the state of the Big 12. So the Big 12 desperately needs consistency at the top. Arizona State can show that. They won, obviously, last year, went toe-to-toe with Texas in a playoff game. They've got, really good recruiting. Do they have 2 top 10 picks and Tyson and Sam Levitt? Like, I think these are all things that, like, would go a long way into create, some teams that are top heavy in this league, for which the rest of the league can judge itself. But yeah, I mean, I go to Arizona State more so than anybody else from a disappointment standpoint, because somebody in this conference needs to emerge to become a consistent winner in it. And obviously Arizona State's the most recent version of that.
So, Ari, I was just curious on y'all's end. What was it like talking spring football? Does it feel different? Like, it certainly did on our end, because there's just there's so much mystery about who's still on your roster, and there's people trying to hide things now. And did that translate over to y'all's coverage as well, and talking to coaches and just kind of getting the vibe of there needs to be a fix, and until then, spring football just doesn't mean what it used to?
Yeah, I mean, nobody really even knows the rules of engagement and can't. So, I mean, you've got some coaches that are gearing up for having to get to 105 on their roster. And that came from their administrators telling them, you're going to have this settlement's going to come down. And because of that, you're going to have 105 players in your roster. So you're I know at Oklahoma State, they're already starting to cut down their roster and cut players. And I'm sure at other places too. And now there's a delay here. And obviously the big story with the delay on the settlement is that they want to grandfather in the players that were already on campus with these teams, that, so it makes the transition easier. So, I mean, how difficult is that? You don't even know how many players are supposed to be in your roster. And by the way, the reason that schools want 105 as the limit is because they want to limit the amount of money that they're spending to have players on the roster. So I'm sure with some schools, they're going to say you're still going to cut players to get us down to 105. Some have already done it and they're down to 105. Others are going to be at 130 or 135. So this is a really difficult time in terms of who's available, who's not. There were also 4,900 players via Chris Summer at 24/7 Sports that entered either the fall or spring portal. That's 4,900 FBS players. So sometimes you look at that and be like, oh, those are some FCS guys or whatever. FBS players, 4,900 of them. So yeah, I mean, it's only getting more and more muddled in terms of having these spring conversations, because everybody's talking about how we can improve still, right? So you could, what was the last time? I mean, Smokey, just think about ending spring practice being you know what, we'd still like to add offensive line. We'd still like what? No, you're what?
Yeah. No, yeah.
What are you talking about? You can't add any more players. It's spring football's over. You're heading to fall now. You're a few months away from the season started.
Yeah, Dion, remember after they had that, whatever the game was that they played, in the press conference, he was asked, what do they need? We'll take 2 corners. We need a couple of dogs at wide receiver. He did everything but long snapper, which Texas signed one of those over the weekend. But it is nuts. I mean, the coaches in some cases complain because they don't know who's going to be on their roster.
Right.
And sometimes that's their own fault because they're trying to replace everybody.
Right. Totally.
Or
You're
some.
right.
Yeah.
No, you're totally right. And look, I mean, I love what Kenny Dillingham is doing at Arizona State. I mean, he is a very unique coach. I mean, I think to be that good and that young and not have an ego like Sark did when he was the coach at USC, or like Kiffin did when he was the head coach of the Raiders at his age. He's the same age as those guys in those situations, but not an egomaniac. And I think you just see the camaraderie amongst that team, just the way in which, that group sticks together. There's a lot to like about the culture at Arizona State, and it's centered around Dillingham. Last year, the biggest reason for me why I thought they'd finish at the bottom of the conference was because they had 60 new players. And you're thinking no way that that's a success, man. If they go into next year adding 60 new players, how many more years before Dillingham is out? And the issue was they brought in 60 new guys because year one for Dillingham, all he did was spend time figuring out who wasn't going to be on his roster the next season. And so he flushed those guys out, Jaden Rashada being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Now Rashada's at Sacramento State on his 5th school. You can't win with those guys. Nico Iamaleava, all the talent in the world. Is he going to be transferring out of UCLA after next season? Similarly to Rashada, it's just hard to win with those guys. So, going back to it, I think culture matters a ton, and how you are able to, include a culture in which guys want to stay and continue to be a part of it. You're not having to, play the portal every year. That's a huge asset to teams that are, that don't have to have 20, 30 new players every year. We're looking at UCF or West Virginia do with their coaching turnover.
Yeah, coaching turnover has a lot to do with that too. Coaches come in, they basically tell players if they're going to be around or not,
Right.
and vice versa, looking for their own type of fit for what they do. Thanks, buddy. Good to see you. Thanks for your time. Have a great week. We'll talk to you soon.
You guys are the best. Thanks for asking.
Thank
And sorry
you.
I was late. Take care.
Absolutely. Ari Temkin, Big 12 Network, with us on 365 Sports. Appreciate his time.
Yeah, I mean, as we slid from the conversation we were having about is this somebody is somebody going to be this year's Arizona State and go from last to first, and not just first, like playing for winning the championship game and all that, making the playoff, nearly knocking off Texas, all that. I just have a hard time seeing that on a yearly basis, but is there an opportunity for that to be the case in the Big 12 probably as much as anywhere else? Yeah, because of just how even the teams are for the most part. And also, I could see an Indiana scenario. I just don't know who that would be this year that you would consider that. But I just don't think it's going to be as unique as last year was every year. I just don't think – you had two examples. And Indiana, not quite the example that Arizona State is, because as much as they came out of the gutter, Arizona State literally picked the dead last spot pretty heavily, considered the last team in the preseason poll, and – they went and won the whole damn thing. Indiana made the playoff. That's sweet, but they were still the fourth team in the Big Ten. I don't know that we'll see that often. And this year, that would mean, again,
Indiana was behind Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State. That's a pretty good threesome.
Yeah, so it's they had a great year, but they didn't exactly just go and snatch the Big Ten and run away with it or anything like that. But yeah, I think if there's a league where you could see a last to first happen more often, it would be the Big 12, where you'd probably see that. Now, I don't know who the candidates would be this year for that. I just have a really hard time seeing Cincinnati or UCF or whoever else is going to be considered down low. I think those two pop right to top of mind for me, because I think those will probably be 15 and 16 or somewhere 14, 15, 16, those two teams when the polls roll out. So that would be your equivalent of that this year. And I don't see anything like that we're just not aware of that would cause them to launch from that spot to first at the end of the year. Again, with Arizona State, it was just a lot of not knowing any better and not really knowing what you were working with. We've seen enough Cincinnati. We've seen enough of everybody else to kind of go unless there's just some smoking ace that we don't know about, up their sleeve, then there's nothing that's going to propel them in that same way. But
yeah, and by the way, Indiana, they've been to a few bowl games, but they had not won a bowl game since 1991, and they were shocking. In the college football playoff, and they didn't play great that first night, but they were in, and they were kind of fun to watch.
Well, and if they were in a different league, I don't know that they're in. So they had that benefit of being in the Big Ten.
They're in a different league, like the ACC or also the Big 12. They probably, but they also may have won it.
Well, then you get into the whole they'd have played a totally different schedule. I know. Who's to say? But all right. Certainly it would have been possible. They were a good team.
We need to break, because coming up, Seth Emerson from theathletic.com on the SEC. As deep as it is and how many dogs are in that conference, there's the Bulldogs and there's the Horns, who seem to be locked in as, again, another favorites, but you never know with Alabama and others right there. How good can they be? We'll hear from Seth Emerson on that. Also, around the corner, yes, we will check in with hockey a couple of times this week after the Stars' dramatic Game 7 win. Bruce Levine, Stars radio broadcast analyst, will join us on the show.
Yeah, if you're looking at the SEC, the standings there, Mississippi State, they're not winning the conference. Kentucky, they're not winning the conference. Auburn, interesting, but they're not winning the conference. Vandy, they're not winning the conference. Arkansas, they're not going to win the conference. Oklahoma, I don't think they're going to win the conference, but that's the bottom dwellers last year in the SEC. They would have to, and probably will be again this year. If you're looking at who would you place above them,
but
that's who will probably be at the bottom once again.
Can they get 2 or 3 or 4 of those just below, above that group? Can any of them challenge the top with Texas and Georgia? Is it Alabama year 2 at DeBoer? Is it someone else that takes a step that had momentum from a year ago? Can Brian Kelly get the Tigers back where they expect to be every year? Seth Emerson, he's next. This is 365 Sports. The Baylor Club, on a week from Wednesday, we will host the 15th annual Academic All-Stars Banquet, where we honor senior student athletes, high school athletes around the Central Texas area. And inside the Baylor Club, the way they set it up, it's a beautiful view. The food and the amenities are incredible. If you have a special event, there's a lot of graduation parties going on. Mother's Day, of course, just around the corner, and other events, even weddings, etc. The Baylor Club is where you should find where you get the space and also incredible, the amenities and customer service. The food is fantastic. We will host that a week from Wednesday inside the Baylor Club. We started doing that after COVID, and it is spectacular. the way it goes, the way they set it up, and the way they also make sure you're happy and those who are attending the banquet. Mike Mosel, the general manager, the Baylor Club inside McLean Stadium off I-35 in Waco.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions, IT success guaranteed.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Emerson, theathletic.com, SEC football offseason tiers. Had the story, contacted him, asked him to join us on 365 Sports. Seth, you know, it's amazing. It's such a deep conference, and yet, really over the years, there's always been those one or two, whether it was Alabama or Georgia, maybe one. So as deep as it is, it does appear as if Texas and Georgia are the ones at the top yet again. Does that surprise you?
Surprise? I think I'd be surprised if it still plays out that way. Like the SEC, because of the schedule and how mixed up it is now, I think teams are going to eat each other up. Texas, I think one of the reasons that they stood out last year and they were the only ones that were like clear of everybody, if you remember that logjam at 6-2, and then 5-3, there were a bunch of teams going into the final weekend. I think one of it was Texas's schedule. And you got to remember that everybody's schedule this year is the same, except it's just flipping home and away. So it'll change a little bit. Like Georgia goes from probably having the hardest schedule in the SEC to probably middle of the way because they don't have to go to Ole Miss and to Texas and to Alabama. They get those three at home, but they still have to play those three teams. Texas still has, they still have some hard games, but they get Texas A&M in Austin. They do go to Georgia. So it's a muddle, but the ones that you feel best about are still the two that were the best last year. I think that was proven. Ole Miss, I think, was still a team that if they had been able to win one of those games that they lost, Kentucky or Florida especially, they were right there for them. I think they were a team that potentially could have done some damage in the playoff. But, Texas and Georgia were the last two standing, and they were the only two in the championship game. And I think they've done the most in the offseason to shore up their rosters.
So of the teams besides them, you mentioned Ole Miss. South Carolina got hot at the end of the year. They got Sellers, among others, back. LSU was kind of hit and miss. A&M hit and miss. Oklahoma, man, they had to struggle, although it does appear as if they've revamped their roster, but their schedule remains very difficult. Who else in the conference, in your opinion, can maybe unseat them if it's not Ole Miss this year?
Well, Alabama is still Alabama.
Yeah.
You have the questions about quarterback, but everyone has a question about quarterback until they get their quarterback. So maybe Ty Simpson is the guy. And maybe by the end of the year, we're talking about him as one of the top 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the SEC. And if we are, then that might be good enough for Alabama, which has a lot of talent in other places. And I think a lot of Alabama people would be like, well, why are you assuming Georgia, for instance, is fine with Gunnar Stockton and not Ty Simpson? Because Gunnar Stockton has a game and a half of experience, very key games, obviously. So Alabama's the first one. South Carolina and Ole Miss obviously were the ones last year. Ole Miss has more roster turnover, but their quarterback, Austin Simmons, did look good when he came in for that one drive against Georgia. South Carolina has roster turnover on defense, a little bit on offense, but they've still got Lenore Sellers coming back. So that's the main thing with them is he's kind of the X factor there. The teams that, I grouped them not so much in tiers of who should do the best. I did Texas, then Georgia. But after that, it was the teams we just talked about, Ole Miss, Alabama, South Carolina, a little bit LSU. But then after that, there are a bunch of these blue blood programs that could rise up this year. Auburn, Florida, Oklahoma especially. And Oklahoma has done a lot in the offseason. A lot of people think John Mateer, their quarterback transfer from Washington State, could be one of the most impactful quarterback transfers in the country. And they've, look, under Brent Venables, they're going to have a good defense. They need to get the offense in gear. And if Mateer is as good as expected, if the receivers are healthy, if the O-line is even a little bit better, Oklahoma could do some damage. And Auburn and Florida are interesting too because of quarterback. Auburn got a new quarterback out of the portal, and Jackson Arnold, Oklahoma's old quarterback. Does he make a big move? Florida has, they finished better as last season went on. If DJ Lagway's shoulder is healthy, but there's just so many questions for everybody, for all of these teams. And there's ifs for Texas and Georgia as well. It's just a few less ifs. Like Texas's big if, I think, is the O-line. Georgia's is also the O-line, and whether Gunnar Stockton is, he doesn't have to be one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, but, can he be one of the top 6 or 7? We're all assuming that Arch Manning is going to be really good for Texas. So this is what we do in the preseason. We look at who has everyone coming back and who has the least amount of flaws. And I think Texas has the least flaws. Georgia has the second amount of least flaws.
It's interesting. I mentioned all the teams, and I didn't mean to overlook Alabama, but it's like never would have done that before and shouldn't have done it this time. And then you see what Kalen DeBoer was able to keep his roster intact after mass turnover with him coming in and Saban coming out. How much has he stabilized, although wins and losses will mean everything, but how much do you think he stabilized there in Tuscaloosa after the first year?
I think he definitely has stabilized it, and it didn't really go off the tracks to begin with him. Like Caden Proctor was a great example of that. Like when he initially transferred back home to Iowa, it was like, oh, here we go. That was on top of Caleb Downs leaving, and I think it was Isaiah Bond going to Texas.
Yeah.
But then Proctor comes back, And overall, they've stabilized it. I think the two things that give you pause about Alabama, besides quarterback, is that they didn't finish well last year. They didn't leave a great impression. They had a dud of a bowl game against Michigan. And, you can say this is the same Michigan team that beat Ohio State, the eventual national champions, but it was still what were they, 7-5 team?
Yeah.
And that was with Alabama not really having opt-outs. Like their guys played in that game. Milroe played in that game. And the other thing that gives you pause is Alabama hasn't exploded on the scene in the transfer portal. They haven't even done – Texas did some more high-profile portal stuff. Georgia did more targeted stuff where they shored up concern spots at especially receiver, but also running back and edge rusher. Alabama didn't do too much, didn't do anything that was really eye-popping. But again, it's still Alabama. So no one would be surprised if at the end of the year they end up back in the SEC championship game.
We mentioned Oklahoma about Mateer, and of course they got Ott from California, among others. And how much do you feel like if they're not careful, no matter the schedule, strength, whatever, but if they're not careful, they go into treading water? Not that they'll be no one cares anymore, but how critical is it this year that they win a couple of games that get people's attention and also are just better?
I missed you at the start. You said Alabama?
No, Oklahoma. I'm sorry.
Oklahoma, yeah. Well, I think, it's critical for Venables to get to, I'd say, you never want to put an arbitrary number on it, but 8 or 9 wins, which it shouldn't be hard considering they're coming off of, I forget, were they 5-7 or 6-6 or, they should be able to make some improvements, but Venables also a couple years ago did win 10 games. So if he only, it's going to be more about, like you said, get a win or two that makes people believe. I don't know if that means beating Texas, but, beat Alabama again. It's going to be tough to do that in Tuscaloosa, but, get some wins like that give you some momentum and be competitive. And also show that the offense is going in the right direction, because there does come a point with this kind of thing. I think you saw it with Muschamp at Florida when they could never get the offense right. And ultimately with Muschamp, it was overall wins and losses, but so much of the frustration was that he couldn't get the offense right. And there just became a conclusion that he just doesn't know how to fix it. And with Venables, he's got to make sure he doesn't become pigeonholed as the defensive guy who just can't, as a head coach, he doesn't know how to produce a good offense.
Seth, Tennessee had the drama with Nico Iamaleava, and they basically flipped quarterbacks with UCLA. Heupel and Tennessee, they're a part of the conversation. But how much of the season is on Heupel? Even though at the beginning everyone was frustrated with Nico, his father, whatever, his handlers, how much does he have to hey, we're fine no matter who's our quarterback?
Yeah, when all that happened, there was this big rally effect around Heupel, and a lot of people saying that, Heupel kind of has a mulligan this year. Everyone kind of understands that this happened. But that'll go away, and it might already be going away the closer you get to the season. And the first time you lose some games you shouldn't lose, or lose in a way that is worse. Like Georgia comes in there in September. What if Georgia comes in there and blows them out? Now, Heupel's not in any job danger or whatever. He's done great. He's gotten Tennessee out of the wilderness. He's gotten Tennessee to relevancy. But the question with Heupel going forward is going to be, does he have a ceiling? Can he burst through that ceiling? Can he get this program to the semifinals? Can he win an SEC championship? He hasn't even been in an SEC championship game yet. So that's going to be the question. And I don't think anyone's expecting that this year because of what happened with Nico. But also, they lost some pieces elsewhere, including James Pierce. But you don't want to go too much backwards. You don't want to go to 6-6. You don't want to even go to 7-5. So, but I think if it's 8-4 with a competitive, the being reasonably competitive in those 4 games and maybe win a game that really rallies people like Georgia or Alabama, then people will feel okay.
Who is more of a wild card? And you alluded to them, Seth Emerson, theathletic.com, and the SEC. Who is more of a wild card at quarterback on how well they perform, with both expected to be good? You mentioned Lagway, Florida, and then obviously Mateer at Oklahoma. How are those two that could not flip the script in the conference, but really they're both look to be dynamic?
Yeah, and they both could be. You could have something special there with Lagway if he's healthy and if he can put it all together. And Mateer, that one could be one because he was at Washington State. It could go a couple ways. Did he not get enough attention because he was at Washington State and, the Pac-12, really the Pac-2? And that just becomes a great move by Oklahoma, a great steal. And there aren't more programs kind of kicking themselves for we should have hopped on that earlier. Or does that become a little bit of an overhyped kind of thing? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think with Lagway, it's probably just a matter of, does he stay healthy? And does Florida have enough weapons around him? I think he can be something special. There's a lot of wild card quarterbacks around the SEC. Gunnar Stockton, we don't know if he's going to, if you take the way he ran the ball against Texas and the way he threw the ball against Notre Dame, you've got a good quarterback, but does he put that together in every game or is he really inconsistent and Georgia sinks down? Alabama, Ty Simpson or whoever ends up quarterback is potentially the most important quarterback in the SEC because quarterback play there could decide how good they are. Jackson Arnold, was he just in a bad situation at Oklahoma because their O-line and their receiver injuries, or is he just not the 5-star that he was rated to be coming out? And you've got your Diego Pavia, obviously, how much can he lift Vanderbilt? Can they steal some more games this year? And on down the list, guys we don't talk about, like Taylon Green at Arkansas. This year is going to be, I think, really interesting at quarterback in the SEC. And that's even well beyond just Arch Manning, the one that most people are talking about.
Well, and speaking of which, he's the chosen one. And listen, he's handled all this very well, been patient. Ewers was really good, took him to consecutive semifinals. But, a lot of times it's who's the backup quarterback. And then in the case of Arch, because of the history, the family, whatever, and I think he can handle anything because of how he's been around, how the family has been. But is there almost too much on his shoulders, or do you feel like it doesn't matter?
I don't think it matters with him. He's been everything we've known about him is that he can handle this stuff. And the fact that he sat for 2 years and he came to Texas knowing he was going to sit a couple years. His finalist when it wasn't Texas was Georgia, and he knew he would probably sit behind Carson Beck for a couple years. He's just got that maturity that, comes obviously from his family lineage. And that would be a huge surprise if he doesn't do well at Texas this year. I'm not saying that, it's Heisman or bust, but you just expect him to have a very good year, a solid year at a minimum, and a great year as a ceiling.
Last question. The SEC, we know, they're not afraid to tell you how good they are, but the Big Ten has won their last 2 national titles with Michigan and Ohio State. And then we know the ACC and the Big 12 are kind of clinging on. They're hoping to have success. They're not going to get as many teams in the tournament, or I guess you could say the playoff. There's a lot of that going on. Are they as good as Sankey says they are, to a point where there's almost an arrogance there, in your opinion? They earned all these national titles where nobody else has anything close. But what do you think overall about the SEC as they enter 2025?
Well, I think there's something to prove for the league after the last couple of years not being in the national championship game. And last year, the only team they had, only getting 3 teams in the playoff and Texas or Tennessee going 1-and-out, Georgia going 1-and-out in 2 games that weren't that close, and Texas barely beating Arizona State and then losing to Ohio State. So there's been a lot of shots taken at the SEC, and it was a long time coming. A lot of people were looking forward to an opportunity to take those shots, and I think that one of the overplayed things that this is what you hear from especially Big Ten area people, but other people is that, with NIL in the portal, when everybody can pay players, the SEC doesn't have an advantage anymore because they over the years, they cheated to get those players, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying they didn't, but if you look at the NFL draft this past year, the SEC still had easily the most players drafted. If you look at the recruiting rankings, the SEC still has the preponderance of 5 stars and 4 stars. It's that the talent is more spread around. It's that the Alabamas and the Georgias and the Texases don't have the ability to stack depth anymore because players can go in the portal if they can see after a year or two that they're not going to be starters. And so the question, this year and beyond is, does the SEC continue to kind of eat each other up? Mm-hmm. Or do you have some of these teams emerge and do you get back to having SEC dominance of the playoff? And I don't know. I don't think there'll be dominance the way there were in the old days just because of the way the whole system is set up. It might be kind of the SEC and the Big Ten trading off national champions and finalists with your Notre Dames and an occasional ACC and Big 12 team kind of sneaking in there. But I don't know whether, is Texas going to be is it going to be their year? Maybe. But I think that the SEC is fine. They're not going anywhere. But it'll be interesting to see if people can be able to continue taking shots at them based on playoff performance this year.
Yeah, well, because we cover we cover everybody. That's why we have you on, and we've had you on before. But the Big 12 doesn't have what you consider an alpha dog or logo because of with Texas and OU leaving, and OU dominated the conference for a long time. But you'd see someone like K-State or Oklahoma State or TCU or Baylor rise up, and win the conference, if not once but twice. But yet the SEC doesn't see that often, right? They're deep as they could possibly be, but boy, wouldn't it be interesting if someone like LSU's been there, but just somebody else get up there rather than it's Texas or Georgia or Alabama. And yet it's a battering ram, and it's hard to do that. You got to be good, not just one game like Vanderbilt for a game or two, but everybody, every weekend and week out. Seth, thank you very much, buddy. Appreciate your time as always. We have so many writers on theathletic.com on 365 Sports. All right, that's Seth Emerson. Appreciate it. The article was written. It was in theathletic.com. We have a lot of writers from there. They're good at what they do, and of course some from the other places as well who have been there before, like what Max is doing now, and Dan Wetzel, who was at Yahoo at ESPN. Coming up around the corner, we'll hear from Bruce Levine. He is the radio analyst. Stars after that dramatic win Saturday, coming back from dead to now be in the second round of the playoffs. We'll do that and much more. Mike Scarborough on LSU. He'll join us at a little after 5, and we'll also look back at the polls that Andrew Valade is putting up. Before then, we will look at what Sam Kahn mentioned to him about how many 5-stars were in the transfer portal. He did that research. We'll have him and that note from him in the 5 o'clock hour. This is 365 Sports. Here's the sticker that you would see on the side or on the window or windshield of a car when it's up for sale. This is the one I talked about earlier, 2025 Dodge Charger Daytona RT Blacktop. It's basically feels like a pace car at a NASCAR event or a race. Dodge Charger 2-door, destroyer gray exterior paint, black interior color, leatherette cloth performance seats. This baby is amazing. I have driven fast cars before. Sometimes, even if they're not fast cars, I've driven cars fast before. I've driven the Challenger and I've driven a Charger. When Ted T contacts me, he goes, "Hey, I want you to try this out and then talk about it." This one's different, man. So has been the reaction to it. I've said it before. People have stopped me and said, "Hey, what kind of car is that?" Because it's not a lot of lettering on it. It is fantastic. The young man today at the convenience store said, that front looks a little bit different. It's the Daytona RT Blacktop 2025 Dodge Charger. It's electric. And I don't mean that to describe it. It is an electric car, which is unique for me. It's at Allen Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Allen Samuels House of Travel is a full-service travel agency with highly experienced travel consultants plus support staff with over a combined 150 years in the travel business. They are ready to take care of any travel situation for you, your family, and your business, and with the kind of knowledge to complete a seamless itinerary trip start to finish. They will search for the best deal to accommodate your budget from air to cars, ship to shore, hotel, and even meeting space. Name a destination and they've been there. They know the places to go, and international and missionary travel is one of their unique specialties. Allen Samuels House of Travel, celebrating 50 years in business. Call Connie, Sherry, Linda, or Bambi at 254-776-2560 or find them on Facebook or at houseoftravelwaco.com. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC. An equal housing lender.
Want to send a message to the show? Jump in the Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue chat room.
All right, 365 Sports. It was a remarkable Saturday night. I mentioned the story that down, everyone knows the Stars and what they did. And then, bam, I don't know how you compare this to a football game, maybe being down 30-0 with 8 to 10 minutes left or whatever. Bruce Levine, radio analyst, Stars radio analyst, joins us. Craig Smoak, David Smoak, 365 Sports. My goodness, Bruce, you didn't even see that happening. How, when you saw the flip of the switch, what was going through your mind?
It flipped until the second Rantanen goal. The first goal, Colorado was winning, and you were sort of going, okay, maybe this is a spark, maybe it's not. But when he scored that second goal coming off the Stars having killed the penalty, that Colorado had a chance to take a 3-1 lead, he does the wraparound. The building had life, and you could feel the momentum had swung. And then all of a sudden, you get a power play. Wyatt Johnson scores. And then the finish. I mean, I have never heard the AAC as loud as it was for the last 5 minutes of that game. It was an amazing night. And, you got to give a ton of credit to Dallas Stars general manager Jim Nill. He saw that Mikko Rantanen was available. He saw that he had a chance to bring an elite hockey player to the team. He went and got the job done, and that's why Dallas is on to round 2. How does Colorado just this has got to be the biggest kick in the nuts as possible, because that's their guy. They had this, it seemed like, all in hand, and then they walk away and they have to shake hands on the ice. How tough was that, you think, for them? Oh, this is an absolute deflation. Their best player, Nate McKinnon, who I think is the second best player in the world, said we couldn't beat Dallas without their best defenseman and one of their top forwards. I don't know where we go from here. That is pure honesty, and it's 100% true. You look at Colorado, they had everything. They made trades at the deadline. They improved their goaltending, improved their defense, farmed out and got 2 great forwards to come and join their squad, and they still couldn't beat Dallas. It's an absolute gut punch for the Avalanche, but all things considered, I'd rather have them have the gut punch than the Stars.
No, absolutely. I'll ask you this only because I don't follow the sport like you do and many others. It's 3-2. There's a loose puck. Obviously, they get down. They toss it in with 2 seconds left. Was that just a normal way to end a hockey game, or do you just keep skating with the puck in your on your stick?
Well, at that point in time, when you're at center ice, all you can really do is just throw it in and hope it bounces. That's not going to happen. It's a big difference between Colorado ending it, because once Dallas cleared the puck out to center ice, Colorado also had to get their players out of the neutral zone and it out to the neutral zone. So there really wasn't life to it. You didn't have a chance onside to do it. Now, last night we saw Winnipeg pull a rabbit out of their hat by shooting the puck. Now, when you have everybody in the offensive zone, you have the puck, it's shoot time. You just get the puck and you shoot it. But Colorado's a little bit of a different situation in the fact that they were down by 2. There's no 2-point shot in hockey. It was over.
Bruce, you said that's the loudest you've heard the AAC. I mean, what's been comparable to that in recent memory?
Maverick playoff games have gotten very loud over the years. It's a different type of feeling because it's just the adrenaline of being down in Game 7. The one thing that you hear is the crowd was so, I think because the crowd was so out of it after Colorado scored to make it 2-0, you went from about a decibel of 0.1 to 115 in a 5-minute swing. That's what makes it different, because the building there was a lot of tension and there was a lot of I think we're going to lose this one, and you could feel the crowd palpably quiet down. But then when the Stars got going, you went from library to 747 noise in about 5 minutes.
I haven't been there a lot. I've been there enough. I remember the Spurs and Mavericks series when Dirk, I think, got hit on top of the head and made a shot, and the Mavericks ended up winning that game in the series. And I do remember that explosion. Now, it's been a while, but it's like everyone. That's the loudest I've ever heard it. It's always that way. Is that more recency bias, or that truly just shook the building?
Oh, Dirk is Dirk, and that was a whole different time and a whole different era. But that series, that entire Spurs series, the building was loud. It didn't go from dead to loud. And maybe it is recency bias, and maybe it's because I work for the Stars. But we're going to go with that. I mean, it was for people that had been there for other activities to give their impression. They said it was the loudest they've ever heard.
Ratton, as far as the trade, now he had the monster night. Was that something he needed and the Stars needed? Was he as good as they wanted when they picked him up in that trade, which kind of shook the world a little bit?
He went from playing with Colorado, where he had been with his entire career, 10 years with them, traded to Carolina, and 1 month later traded to the Stars. There was a lot of emotional baggage, a lot of packing, unpacking. He joined the team ultimately he wanted to, but he never really got to the elite level during the regular season. Now, during the last 2 playoff games, Miro Heiskanen became the first player in NHL history to have a 4-point period in 2 consecutive games. Game 6, he and Roope Hintz became the first teammates to have a 4-point period together in the same game. So as he got more comfortable and as the series went on, Rantanen showed his greatness, showed his talent, and he showed why Dallas got him. Now, what you hope for going into the series with Winnipeg is that Mikko Rantanen can stay at that elite level. There's no reason to think he won't.
Peter DeBoer, 7. What is his record? 9-0. 9-0 in Game 7s, Bruce. Can you try to put that in perspective?
There really isn't a perspective because no other coach in any other sport has ever gone 9-0 in Game 7s. It is just, when Pete DeBoer talked about home ice advantage, doesn't mean a whole lot for Game 1, but it means a ton for Game 7. We see now, because in hockey, you're allowed to use one team's got to put, the visiting team has to put their players on the ice, and you get the matchups. You get to put the players out you want to against the other teams. And that's where Pete DeBoer really shines, is in a Game 7, he gets the matchups he wants and has what he thinks to be a tactical advantage by playing certain lines and certain defensive pairings against other teams, and no one else has ever touched that as far as 9-0. It's absolutely mind-boggling that in do or die, go-home games for both teams, Pete DeBoer has never been on the losing side of the handshake. That's unfathomable.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
No.
I listened to a segment up on the Ticket on occasion with Bob Sturman and those guys, and I know that the questions lately have been a lot about health, and when are we getting these guys back? It appears there's some good health news on the horizon entering round 2. Is that right?
Well, I was at their optional practice today and saw both Jason Robertson and Miro Heiskanen, and they looked like they were skating at full speed. These guys look like at some point in time in round 2, they are going to be into the lineup for the Dallas Stars. And you're talking about a Stars team that without Heiskanen and Robertson just beat Colorado. This will be the first time, if they can join the squad, that the Dallas Stars will have their full intended squad together. Tyler Seguin missed 4.5 months. Heiskanen's been out since January. Rantanen gets traded in February. He hadn't had a chance to play with everybody. Robertson's been out since the end of April, or since mid-April. You're talking about this team healthy and everyone available just in time for round 2, or maybe a game or 2 into round 2. That's why the Stars are considered to be the favorites to win the Stanley Cup by a lot of people around the planet.
Garrett?
Yeah, I was just wondering, Bruce, what are your thoughts on this battle coming up in between the pipes when you got Hellebuck going up against Oettinger here?
You know, it's the battle for who's going to be the starting goalie for Team USA in the Olympics next year. Hellebuck, during the regular season, all-world, greatest goalie in the NHL, was the starter for most of the games in the Four Nations, struggles in the playoffs, got obliterated last year by Colorado in the first round, almost lost to a St. Louis team that's not great offensively. But the concern is, now that he's gotten past the first round, are the demons gone, and is he going to be all-world again? On the other hand, Jake Oettinger, 3-1 in game 7s, and the one game he lost, he made 64 saves in double overtime. Stars have the utmost confidence in Jake Oettinger. Jake Oettinger has the utmost confidence in Jake Oettinger. And remember, the only stat in the playoff that matters are wins. That's the only stat the goaltenders worry about, is, do I get to 4 before the other goalie gets to 4? This is going to be a American-made matchup for the ages in this next series. It's going to be fun to watch.
We talked about the defenseman there a little bit. Miro, obviously, his injury has been crucial to this team. But when you look at what Harley's been able to do, Lindell, these guys who are stepping up, can you talk about the defenseman unit as a whole and the play that they've been able to put together to get the Stars to the second round of the playoff?
Well, first of all, Colorado is not an easy team to defend. They have a ton of talent, a ton of speed, and if you snooze for a minute, the puck's in the net. So Thomas Harley raised his game, playing at sometimes 27, 29 minutes a game, basically filling the Miro Heiskanen role. And Thomas Harley, who was a late entry to the Four Nations, has really raised his game since getting that honor to play internationally. Now, he has logged a lot of minutes. He's also a guy that handles the power play for Dallas. So you got to see, is he okay after playing this many hard minutes in the first round of the playoffs? Esa Lindell may be the best penalty killer in the NHL. A lot of times when Dallas is on the PK, Esa Lindell will be out there for the entire 2 minutes. He blocks shots. He's positioning. He's muscling guys off the puck. Esa Lindell has been fantastic, and he doesn't get enough recognition for being a defensive defenseman because he's just that good. Just people don't notice the guys who don't score, but the Dallas Stars will tell you they are nowhere without Esa Lindell. And for me, the big surprise of the playoffs was the effectiveness of a rookie and a guy who played in the minors all year. The rookie, Liam Bichsel, hard to miss, 6'4", 240, 20 years old. He is going to be a beast for years to come for Dallas. On the other hand, Alex Petrovic played a little bit with Bichsel early in the season in the AHL, gets called up to the playoffs, and that pairing was surprisingly effective in the playoffs, and the Stars needed all 6 defensemen the entire series. So it was a good look for Dallas. Yeah, they had some moments against a tough Colorado team, but in the end, when you look at the 4 games Dallas won, they held Colorado to 3 goals, 1 goal, 2 goals, and 2 goals. That's why Dallas got the wins.
I'm glad you mentioned the youth there, and that kind of goes into what I wanted to ask you here. As far as the overall game of hockey right now, it feels like with the talent that you have coming up, the facilities you're getting with like North Dakota, you saw what Western Michigan was able to do this year in college. Penn State's getting back in the mix. The PWHL is starting to pop off. Is this the healthiest you've seen hockey, or where can you say the game is at right now from a popularity standpoint, or just the cohesiveness of the in general?
What we're seeing is hockey has had a bit of a resurgence because of the amount of people who are playing. And if you look across the country, the numbers keep going up. There's a diversity in hockey. You look at guys like Jason Robertson with a Filipino background, and you have more African Americans playing hockey. I shouldn't say African Americans and African Canadians playing hockey than ever before. So the game has reached out and widened. It's not just guys from Canada skating around. And then you have the excitement of the international tournaments that really gets people interested, watching, and then the more they watch, the more they join in. The Four Nations tournament was a huge success as far as ratings and interest was concerned. Next year, you have the Olympics, which raises the profile of both men's hockey and women's hockey. And I'll tell you one thing, as someone who's skated against women who have played college hockey, they are good. This is not, some kind of just throw it out there kind of fun thing. These women can play. So as far as their growth is concerned, hockey is still fantastic and still on the upswing. It still has some work to do, though, because football's football and, basketball, NBA still has quite the foothold. But hockey, inch by inch, is making an attempt and is successful at that attempt at growing the sport.
Every league is different when they set up the postseason. The seedings, whether it's from division and or conference. The NHL goes with divisions right off the top. Is that for travel? Is that also because of rivalries that have been established? How do they do that, and does that change at all as they move into the next round or two?
Well, it doesn't change at all. It is from divisions because they wanted to create rivalries. They wanted to get teams that play each other during the regular season, and if you notice the intensity level, you can build a very good hatred very quickly against teams from your division that you play in the postseason. Now, to a certain extent, that's worked. You look at Dallas, Colorado the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. Those have been insane playoff series. But Dallas and Winnipeg next round, going back to the history of this franchise all the way back to the North Stars 60-something years ago or 58 years ago, Dallas and Winnipeg have never played. These two franchises have never played in the playoffs. So it's sort of interesting. Now, back on the East, when you have Florida playing Tampa and Toronto playing Ottawa, the divisional rankings work. It creates great rivalries. The downside to that is, like, for example, Dallas playing Colorado, these were teams that shouldn't have met until at the very least round 2 or round 3, based on where they ended the season. So you run the risk, and this happened to the Dallas Stars in 2016. They were the best team in the Western Conference. And in the second round, they had to play the second best team record-wise in the Western Conference. A lot of people want to go to the 1 through 8 seeding that you see in the NBA, but Gary Bettman, as commissioner, loves the rivalries, loves the divisional, I would say, tussles, loves the bad blood. So it looks like we're going to have this for a while.
Bruce, Daniel Acton in our chat room off to the side of our podcast asked about a prediction for the next series. Winnipeg won the season series 3-1, and I think it was like 10-3 in the Winnipeg wins, and then Stars won in one of those as well. But I get the feeling, and I did brush up on this, that Dallas, even though Winnipeg's the seed, a better seed, is Dallas favored in this series?
Dallas is favored in this series because Winnipeg is missing, at least for the first game, we expect them to be missing Mark Scheifele, who's their second leading scorer, and Josh Morrissey, who is their top defenseman. Does that sound familiar to Stars fans?
Yeah.
It should, because the Stars just won that. And the thinking that if the Stars can get by Colorado without Robertson and Heiskanen, and then they get them back, and then they have the full boat of talent available, this is a hard team to overlook. So not only are the Stars favored in the series, they're actually favored by most to meet Florida, in that the Florida and the Stars are each the favorites to meet in the Stanley Cup final. All that being said, Winnipeg plays an incredibly structured game. And if they get ahead by a goal or two, coming back on them is going to be tougher than it was to come back on Colorado. This is a team that plays great 5-man defense. What you've got to do against Winnipeg is get them to trail. If they have to try to score and come out of their structure, they're a team that can be beaten. We saw St. Louis do that in 3 games. Dallas has to get out in front and make Winnipeg come to them.
Yeah, it's like playing an Ivy League team in basketball, isn't it? Not the UNC, not North Carolina 4-corner with Dean Smith, but it's like playing Yale or Harvard or whoever, Princeton. And if you get behind they don't make mistakes. They don't usually, you're not going to go on a 10-0 run against them unless you're just so much better talent-wise.
Right. Well, Pete Carroll would have loved that reference there. Pete Carroll. It's Pete Carroll, right?
Yeah, Pete Carroll. Yeah.
I said Carroll of Princeton. Yeah, it's very similar in that Winnipeg was coached by Rick Bowness, who's a former Dallas Stars head coach. And people in Dallas got a little upset with Rick Bowness because it was defense first. They felt Dallas had more talent and should be out there pushing the attack. Well, he goes to Winnipeg, and though Winnipeg has talented players, they buy in 1,000% to that structured system. And you're not, if you fall behind, and we saw that the last time Winnipeg was at the AAC, you are not going to get Winnipeg to make mistakes. They don't make mistakes when they're in front. Dallas Stars have to find a way to play from in front and get that structure to have to take gambles as compared to just sitting back and protecting that lead in front of a goaltender who's world class.
Last thing, we've seen the Mavericks last year, although they didn't win it, they went to the finals. We've seen the Rangers a couple of years ago win a World Series, which I never thought I would see the day. We've seen, of course, what the Stars have done. It has been a long-ass time, as you know, Bruce, for the Cowboys to be in a position like this. They've been to the playoffs, but we know what's happened to them. Can you imagine that all of these other franchises have enjoyed championships and runs to it while they still remain in this 30-year drought? You've been in Dallas and Fort Worth for a long, long time, man.
First of all, I'd like to point out the Stars have won a championship more recently than the Cowboys. I do want to point that out. It's been a while. It's been a minute since 1999.
No, yeah.
But the thing is that the Dallas Stars, last year, the Stars made it to the Western Conference Final. The year before, they made it to the Western Conference Final. Last year, they had to share the spotlight with the Mavericks, making their run to the NBA Finals. This is the Stars' chance to shine as a team, as an organization, as a franchise. What would it be like? Well, you've got so many people that have been pulling for this organization for so long. And I was with this team back in the dark days where they didn't have an owner. If you remember 15 years ago, when the league was running it because Thomas Hicks no longer owned the club. To go from that to what the organization is now, there is one thing missing, and that is the Stanley Cup championship. It's there. It's there for the taking, but it's not going to be easy. I think we could paint this town victory green for the next 8 weeks if the Stars do what they're capable of doing.
Absolutely. I think it's been great to see the Stars, Rangers, and also Mavericks. By the way, Mike Scarborough, who's our next guest from Tiger Bait, he said, Bruce Levine used to be with the Louisiana Ice Gators in the 90s. We did shows on the same radio station. He's saying hi to you in the chat.
Hi, Mike. I appreciate it. Boy, that was back in the day. That was, I left, if you remember Smoker, I worked at Channel 8.
Yep, you did.
People said, where'd you go? I went to go do minor league hockey. I was going to go chase my dream of being a hockey announcer, and I wound up in Lafayette, Louisiana, and you can look it up. This is not hyperbole. We still own every regular season attendance record in AA hockey across North America.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Bruce, thank you, buddy. Appreciate the knowledge.
Hey, by the way, I've got a kid who's 6'4", 270, has a 4.0, plays tackle. If you know any colleges looking for a smart kid that can play football, hit me up.
No, send me a text. I'll send it out. I got a lot of college coaches that can I got a few head coaches, but I'll send it out. Send me a text for the information, buddy. Appreciate it.
Got it. Thanks, Bruce. Appreciate it.
Bruce Levine, he's been around the Dallas market for a long, long time, as he mentioned, then went away for a little bit, was at Channel 8 in Dallas, did a great job there. Do you want to go straight to Mike?
Yeah, let's go
Mike Scarborough, Tiger Bait, joins us on 365 Sports after a little shout out to our last guest. Hey, man, how you doing, sir? So you get on, you're getting ready to come to your segment, you see him, and all of a sudden you go, oh, man, I know him.
You know what's funny is if I dig in that filing cabinet behind me, I think I have the commemorative puck from the opening night of the Ice Gators. You have no idea how big ice hockey was in the Cajun Dome in Lafayette, Louisiana in the 90s. He was right. The attendance was off the chain.
Ever any chance of an NHL team down in New Orleans?
I don't know about that. They got a problem with the Pelicans and the Saints.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
All right, Mike, we mentioned Halsey earlier, the commitment to safety from Houston. Let's get into that first and then eventually get into a lot of things. LSU football, and as always, thanks for your time. He was the top-rated safety in the portal. He was really good at Houston. Well, how much of a win was this to what LSU needed as they continue to fill up their roster?
Look, they had the advantage of going through spring. We thought maybe that if there was a good one in the portal, they would go get one. We also thought they would go get a defensive lineman, which they did. And so LSU has spent a lot of money, well into the 20 millions since December, and went heavy in that portal period, depending on where you look and people rate and transfer portal classes. LSU's number one by many and no less than 2 or 3. And so it was a nice get. LSU has still a question mark. It's safety. That's probably the biggest question mark on defense. Of course, cornerback was a big question mark, but they addressed that with Delane from Virginia Tech. And you got Jackson from Florida to go along with Stamps and others. So they really have rebuilt that defense in a big way and filled a lot of shoes that where they had question marks. It's still, look, you can have a nice transfer portal class on paper, and what kind of hit rate do you need? Do you need 35, 45% of them to pan out, or do you end up in a bad way like Florida State last year, where your transfer portal moves really cost you bigly?
So, Mike, that 20 million mentioned, is that the whole roster? Or is that transfer portal you're talking about there?
That's transfer portal.
Okay. So you saw the story last week about Texas and the $35 million roster, and there's a lot of people that are like, no, that's not completely accurate. And all that. I didn't balk at it just because it's like, well, first of all, you can do that if you want to. It's nothing illegal nowadays. And second of all, there's all sorts of crazy numbers being thrown around. So if they're spending 20 on the transfer portal alone, a $35 million roster is not completely out of the question, is it?
Well, and look, I might be wrong. It could be 25 and a half or 27 for total, but it's up there. So I tend to think if the number's 35 at Texas, it would sound right that LSU would be 25 to 27, 28. So that I wouldn't bat an eye at that Texas number either.
Mike Scarborough, TigerBait.com with us on 365 Sports. Where is it if LSU doesn't win 8 or 9 games or even more? What is in store for Brian Kelly?
Just an ugly offseason. He's not going anywhere. But it will be ugly with the fans. And it'll be ugly with the fans in week 1. And look, I looked at Joel Klatt's video this morning. I think y'all talked about it. Got Clemson in the top 5, LSU at 7. And so that's your opener on the road at Clemson. And you lose that one, that'll be 6 straight opening season losses for LSU dating back to the Orgeron era. That is insane. And of course, you have to go on the road to Alabama. You get Oklahoma at home. The schedule does not do you any favors this year. I tend to think in the 9-3, 8-4 realm. You lose the opener, and you could be looking at 8-4, and that would make for a very bad offseason.
Well, Mike, especially the expectations, not only spending, the amount that you mentioned, but they got a quarterback now that's all over these mock drafts. I mean, the draft ended a week ago, and these things are starting to come out. I saw Todd McShay's got him as the number 1 quarterback. I think the only other guys that are really being mentioned in that first round already are like Cade Klubnik and Lenoris Sellers. And there may be Drew Aller, I think, from Penn State's the only other one. But, man, you talk about a guy who the hype machine's in full force already. Just can you kind of describe that for Garrett Nussmeier?
Yeah, and I think it's perfectly fine. I think it's legit. I think Nussmeier's that good. He needs to cut his interceptions in half. I think I predicted last year he'd have 10 or 12, and that's exactly what he had. I think he needs to cut that number in half. I think he's going to be buoyed big time by what they did in the portal at wide receiver. And I think had he had Chris Hilton healthy all last season, and y'all got a good look at him in the bowl game, he's a difference maker. If he picks up where he left off and is healthy all season long, and then you add Nick Anderson and Brown from Kentucky to go along with Aaron Anderson and so forth, this offense is going to be pretty damn spectacular. But again, the big question mark, you lose some NFL draft picks on that offensive line. O-line is the big question mark on offense. I think they're going to get rid of the ball pretty quick. I think Bauer Sharp, who they got from Oklahoma, had an unbelievable spring at tight end. So you have him to go along with Trey'Dez Green. I think they're going to do a lot of stuff with Bauer Sharp in the short passing game. If they do some of the stuff we saw them do in spring practices with him, I like some of the new wrinkles. But bottom line is LSU's running game is left a lot to be desired. That offensive line has got to do a much better job in the running game.
So is it the line or the backs that they have aren't good enough to do anything with it?
Well, look, we can sit there and say Josh Williams wasn't this or that. Caden Durham was a freshman and hurt and had dislocated toes on his foot. He's 100% now. Caleb Jackson is still learning the position. Some people question his vision. But what they've got now, and with JT Lindsey coming in, the true freshman Harlan Berry, who was fantastic throughout the spring, you're not going to be able to say, the running back group either doesn't have the speed or doesn't hit the hole or lacks vision. It's going to be on the offensive line. So I think there's a lot of pressure on LSU's offensive line coach, Brad Davis, to get that group up to speed.
I don't want to bring the mood down entirely, but it was, of interest. Kyron Lacey and that story just a few weeks ago, his very unfortunate and sudden passing. Just what's it been like there? What was it like there in Baton Rouge when that news hit, and just kind of the remembrance and just all that came with that, unfortunately? Yeah,
it's just a sad thing. I think a lot of us who interviewed him and interacted with him, some in recruiting, friends that I knew in Lafayette that dealt with him when he was a Raging Cajun. We knew he had his ups and downs, but he was a super kid, and that's just it was an unfortunate situation all the way around. There's a lot of sad folks around here, and everybody's still keeping his family and friends in their thoughts and prayers.
That bowl game down in Houston, they were just the weapons that Nussmeier had, plus he was brilliant. But Baylor was able to throw the ball. Robertson had a huge game. It came down to maybe hit this and that. LSU was better, don't get me wrong. So what have they improved? What happened to them? Because we hear about the Baylor secondary. My God, it was torched. But is that LSU? Have they improved that too? And that, I guess,
that's why that's why they went in the portal real big at DB to go along with, the 5-star Pickett that they got high school signing class. You got Stamps back, so that's why they went and got guys like Halsey and Mansour Delane from Virginia Tech, Jakeem Jackson from Florida. That secondary absolutely needed to be addressed. And they've got to get coached up. It's on Corey Raymond and that staff. But I think the defensive line, the edge rushers are going to be fantastic. I know they gave this offensive line that, again, they have question marks, fits all throughout the spring. And the linebacker group looked fantastic in the spring, and they were doing it without Harold Perkins and Whit Weeks participating. So that group has some depth. And so I'm probably defensively, I'm most excited about the edge rushers.
Well, I mean, Perkins was a star his freshman year, and then all of a sudden, would they play him out of position and they kind of have him back to where he needs to be, or did he himself get a little too comfortable?
I think I'm more excited about what Blake Baker plans to do with him this upcoming season than the previous 2 years. And so, and look, I mean, the fact of the matter is that, that linebacker group performed well without him last year. But I think with what they say they're planning on doing with him, I like what they're going to, I think it's going to be a better spot for him.
Mike, I know this is kind of a question I guess we could ask closer to the game, but it's the very last game of the year. Have you ever been to Norman for a football game? And I know they didn't play at Texas last year, but it had me wondering, what is, in your opinion, as a guy who's well-traveled, the best environment in the SEC? So I guess a two-part there. Have you ever been to Norman for a game? And what, in your opinion, is the best road game in the SEC?
I haven't. Man, that's tough because man, Texas A&M is a great venue with what they do. It's kind of weird not having Auburn on the schedule. I think Auburn doesn't get the credit. Tuscaloosa, although it's post Saban, I think maybe that's fallen off a bit. The Swamp isn't near what it used to be. Don't play Georgia a whole lot. That's got to be tough. Man, there's just a lot of great venues. Fayetteville can be, but I'd probably say A&M at A&M. The home team seems to always win that one. I might give it to Texas A&M right now.
Yeah, I think that's a fair one. I think you're going to enjoy Norman a lot when you get to go. I've been to a few games there. It's a lot of fun. I think it fits in quite nicely with the SEC. So, and Texas is great as well.
Well, and look, and LSU, of course, laid the wood to them. But I'm like, man, you don't understand. You did what you did to Oklahoma last year, but you saw what they did to Alabama when they had them at home. I think they're going to be a different animal playing them at home. That's why I think this schedule is so difficult. You open up at Clemson. You get Florida at home. South Carolina has got a lot of excitement coming into this season. You get them. You got to go at Vanderbilt. Okay. That's not a walk in the park, is it? At Vanderbilt now?
Not with Pavia, the quarterback right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So A&M at home, at Alabama, and then you end at Oklahoma. So if you lose the opener to Clemson, you're absolutely behind the 8 ball if it's playoffs or bust. It's going to be very difficult to get there.
Mike, who has the most overrated stadium in the SEC?
I'm going to go with the Florida Gators. It's not what it used to be.
Yeah. Well,
I talked to some Florida people. They say it's gotten way too corporate. But it used to be, 20 years ago, you'd say it was either between LSU or Florida.
Yeah. Well,
Florida might not even be in the top 6 anymore.
Yeah, they aren't what they used to be. Although Lagway, man, this kid he's special. Maybe he brings that magic back to the Swamp.
Yeah, he got the win for LSU. Helped Napier get that one last year.
Is there somebody in the middle of the pack, and that would include perhaps Florida, Auburn, South Carolina, and South Carolina with Beamer has been really, you've been seeing them right on the edge. Any of those teams, Missouri, they've got 11-2, 10-3, whatever it is. Can any of those teams break that top level of Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Tennessee without Nico? Who knows what's going to happen with them? Can they break that bubble?
I don't know. Is South Carolina maybe that sleeper team? It's all about the quarterback. If he's healthy, he's dangerous. And without having pulled up their schedule and looked at it in the way it sets up. But I do think it's going to be difficult for anybody to break through from that top level. I'm sitting here talking about LSU possibly going 8-4.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people have LSU as a top 10 team. I'm mainly there because of the schedule. It's we're back in this routine where, typically LSU's. I think the Clemson game just really does not do them any favors, and now when you've got Oklahoma to end things, I don't know. Maybe you can lose the Clemson game and lose one other one, but you're really going to have some health and really stay healthy.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate your time, my friend. Great to see you.
All right. Anytime. Talk soon.
Tiger Bait, Mike Scarborough with us on 365 Sports. One of the things about the SEC is that I believe there are 5 stadiums, Garrett and Craig, 5 stadiums with over 100,000 capacity. It's
2 in Texas.
Right. and 2 of them, A&M, and of course, UT with DK Royal Memorial Stadium. Kyle Field, not in any particular order, Tiger Stadium, LSU, Neyland Stadium, Bryant-Denny, and then, of course, both at Texas. That's 5. Over 100,000 in the capacity of the stadium.
Yeah, I don't know. The last time I saw sort of a stadium expansion, like attendance type of move by a school, Tech, did they really add many seats?
I don't think they added very many seats.
Yeah, I don't think they made a big difference there. So I'm trying to think of just the last time I would have seen a story about expanding. And I think it might have been Texas all those years ago when they decided to get up over 100,000. Like that's the last time I remember there being like a big to-do about it. Did you have something, Garrett?
I was just sitting here thinking in my head. I don't know if Kansas is part of theirs, if they're adding any additional seats, or what that's going to be like.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head how much of a difference they're going to have. But, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of big programs in that league, and that's why they are the top league along with, well, all the winning mostly. I mean, for 20 years, that's really what brainwashed everybody, or not just brainwashed, but like solidified it, and then also a little bit of brainwashing as well, a little bit of brainwashing, but it was mostly going and winning all those titles for 20 years and then adding the two teams who have won, 10 plus together and have won a couple of them in that 20-year period that the SEC hadn't won. So now you got them, and they're bringing in stadiums of 100,000+ Texas and then 80,000+ with Oklahoma. But, yeah, I'm trying to think of, like, if there's anybody that's going to be in the 100 category that's not right now. That's why I was just curious about that. And your mention of that just made me think about that. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, LaVell Edwards Stadium is it's like 63 or 4. And we know, and we've heard stories, and I mean, they got that what they have as an atmosphere is amazing. Iowa State can be underrated. I've been there a couple of times for games.
So the closest would be,
and Tech's just right there in that 60,000+ range.
I believe the closest would be, it's not at 100,000, because Bryant Denny's like less than 100 people over that. I mean, it's just like barely
90,
over.
Like Bryant Denny's just over 100.
Just over 100. It's
Georgia's the next one at 92.
Well, thank you for stealing my thunder.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it would be Georgia at 93,033.
That's a lot of seats they'd have to add.
So they would be needing 7,000 seats to do that. Nebraska's got 90 flat, so they'd need to add another 10,000 being there. I don't know how that could possibly happen.
I think they're going to actually decrease theirs.
Yeah, I don't see how that would work now. So, yeah, I mean, then Gainesville, if you're not counting like the neutral sites, like the Cotton Bowl is obviously not going to add another 8,000 seats. There's no need to. Rose Bowl would need another 11, and then Florida. So it would be Georgia and then Florida, I guess. So yeah, 2 more SEC teams, and then it's Jordan Hare and Auburn, 88,000. So those aren't likely to all add 10,000 anytime soon or ever. But if you were to keep expanding, there'd be another 3 teams that'd all be from that same damn league. That would be 100,000+. So yeah, that's the kind of following they got.
I want to address a couple of things. I did see Bracket Cat, who's a huge K-State fan. We are a college football podcast, and sometimes we have to stop and reset that. What's all the SEC stuff going on with today's show? I'm not going to complain about it. It's just that Seth Emerson wrote a column. We have gone through all 16 of the Big 12 schools. We've had a lot of head coaches on, even an assistant coach with Texas Tech, and numerous analysts. And we're going to go around the country and look at different things. And they happen to just schedule Seth and Mike in the same day. I understand a lot of you are also here for the Big 12 content. And if what we do in our track record day in and day out, I think it speaks for itself. But I just a little comment about what's it with all the SEC stuff? They play football and pretty damn good football too. So like we're going to do Indiana's schedule. It's a Big Ten. We are trying to be diverse, and some of you have said that. So I just wanted to bring that up to those who kind of questioned what we were doing today with the SEC and then also having LSU and a coverage from Mike Scarborough. So just wanted to get to that. All right, around the corner, it's a Big Ten schedule. We have not done that for 2 or 3 days. We had to take a break.
We're doing the transfer 5 stars.
Yeah, no, I'm just around the corner, the Big Ten with Indiana. But it ain't all over the college football landscape. We had Sam Kahn on Thursday. We asked him as we were going through a lot of the portal, which he, of course, covers like a blanket for theathletic.com, about how many 5-star players have actually ended up in the portal. So Sam, I think it was on Friday, put out a tweet about it. And so here is what he said. This is the list, according to Sports Source, 25 players who are 5 stars. Can you go back to the first one first, Garrett, if you don't mind? 25 players who entered the portal in the last offseason, like this offseason, had at one point a 5-star rating coming out of high school per 247. 2 return for their original team, A&M's Micah Hudson, and Oklahoma's David Stone, the defensive lineman. Former 5-stars, 23 changed schools during the offseason. And then that next page is a list of all of them. I didn't know if it'd be 5. I didn't know if it'd be 2. I didn't know if it'd be 40. But there's the number that Sam Kahn from theathletic.com with some research there. Your thoughts, Craig?
I mean, don't have any really. I think that's, good fodder for others that get really into their tables and all the statistics of the transfer portal and things like that. I don't know what I would have guessed, probably somewhere like 15 or so. But that's what, 20, 25 is what you said, 20?
25. 23 because
So
Stone and Hudson went back to their original teams.
Yeah, so does Texas Tech get credit for that in the rankings?
Well, remember, that's what the question was. That was my question.
I think they do, which I do think. I mean, he left, so, technically that's correct. It's also kind of misleading a little bit, but that's okay. So 25s, I guess, a bit more than I would have suspected, and it's hard for me to actually read the print on there. I should have pulled up the tweet, but it's a transfer portal world, and 5-stars aren't off limits to that either. So that's probably about right in the grand scheme of things. You've got 1,000 3-stars every year, and there's probably 500 of them in the portal. And then you've got 30 5-stars, and there's, I guess, 20. So I don't know. Maybe that doesn't average out correctly, but you get where I'm going there. It's probably about right, but some interesting names on there for sure. A lot of guys who got a lot of social media coverage and a lot of big talk there during their recruitments and even their first few years where they were in some cases. That I'm just Jackson Arnold, Micah Hudson, et cetera, Nico Iamaleava, some really interesting guys to track this year and see if they're going to live up to that 5-star status or beyond that, or even sniff it in some cases. So yeah, that's a cool chart that he put together. I need to look more at that later on.
I appreciate Sam because we asked him that question, and I remember the 5-stars, and I did ask him about, does he get credit? Does a Texas Tech or Oklahoma get credit for somebody coming right back, kind of the boomerang effect, so to speak, with them going back to who they were originally?
Yeah,
does
a lot
A&M
of
lose a 5-star because Hudson was there for a cup of coffee and left? I don't know.
A lot of Texas A&M on here. I mean,
that whole class got obliterated.
Connor Wegman in 22, gone. Denver Harris in 22, gone. Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy in 22. That's 3 5-stars off the same class that are all gone from Texas A&M. North Carolina, I mean, my gosh, they had 3 5-stars in the top of this list. Keyshawn Silver in 21, Travis Shaw and Zach Rice in 22. Both those guys are gone. So, yeah, I think those two. I mean, LSU's got a couple. Texas with Jonte Cook.
North Carolina, you're right. 3 from them.
But
A&M
North Carolina and A&M are the most rampant on here, and it's only 3 apiece. But still, that's a good chunk of a list that's only 25 people long, and 6 of them are from 2 schools. So you had 2 schools that whiffed on 3 5-stars within a 2-3 year period. That kind of sucks, especially given how excited people were for those recruitments and those signings and those roster additions, and then they don't pan out. So that's part. I mean, USC, Malachi Nelson and Deuce Robinson. So yeah, I mean it's an interesting list. You can break that down probably a lot of different ways depending on who you are, but it's cool to look at and get a scope of the fact that 5-stars aren't immune to not living up to their potential, and they are certainly not immune to the transfer portal, whether it's by choice or not by choice. So, yeah, some interesting names to watch this season from the portal that used to be some big-time recruits.
4 quarterbacks. And then I just tried this just with my eyesight, see just a couple of running backs, a couple of 3 wide receivers, but mainly, as you can see on the offense and defensive line, which is, again, when they are good at 5-stars, a 5-star quarterback if he's good, but the big boys in either side of the ball are a part of that list more than anybody else.
Yeah, I like seeing how it filters down a little bit, but most of these guys are still going to big time schools. They're not going from LSU to UTSA or something. And I'm not trying to knock the Roadrunners, but that's just a name I see on here. But LSU to, well, I guess to be determined, but Washington to Utah, North Carolina to Kentucky.
Yeah, I didn't even
Georgia
look at
to
that
Florida
part.
State.
Yep.
I mean, they're all pretty much staying Power 5. The exception is Denver Harris going from A&M to UTSA, and then Malachi Nelson to Boise, but he's already at UTEP. Yeah, he's already been on 2 different schools since then, which is interesting as well. So, yeah, it's cool to look at.
Big 12 lost Justin Flo, the wide receiver. Well, they weren't even
He's on Arizona and he transferred
Utah
to UNLV.
was Heward.
A lot of 3-school guys on these 5
Absolutely.
stars.
Yep.
Sam Heward was at Washington, or he signed with Washington, and then he went to Utah, and now he's at USC. And Sage Ryan, well, he's only 2. So, yeah,
hell, Denver Harris was 3-1 because I think that he sees it there via LSU.
Was he the one driving in the parking garage?
So he's actually on school 4, I think.
Maybe 4 at this point.
So 5-star with 4 schools. That's not how it's supposed to work.
Speaking of Heward, Brock was a hell of an analyst for Fox. He's going to coach his son in high school now, and I'll miss him doing the games. I always enjoyed him. I just kind of enjoyed, not a low key, but it was just he was just there doing a solid job on color. RG3, that door opened though for Robert Griffin III to get more and back involved in college football.
I want to see the first 5-star go to 5 schools. That'll be the super duper 5-star elite ranking or whatever, but we're not far off from that, actually.
Bear Alexander's pretty close.
He's pretty close.
Where's he at? I don't even know now.
I honestly cannot even remember where he's at.
You don't know, Craig?
I cannot remember.
I don't know. I know he was at USC right after Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And
Is
there
he
was
at
at
Oregon?
Georgia.
He's at
Georgia.
Oregon now.
Maybe he's there.
He's at Oregon
Isn't
now.
that crazy?
Yeah, he's
all
at
right.
Oregon.
When we come back, Indiana, the Hoosiers, one of the great stories last year in college football. Their coach, by the way, Signetti, was on, I don't know what show it was. He talked about he thinks 6 teams, not just UT, 5 or 6 programs are going to spend $40 million on their roster. I'll try to find that for you. But also, look at their schedule. The Hoosiers of Indiana. This is 365 Sports. Garrett, you want to do Ideal or Richard Carr?
Ideal.
MRI.com, Dr. Rob Maxey. Man, I appreciate him. From day one, they have been a part of what we do here on 365 Sports. State-of-the-art imaging machine. You have something that hurts you. For me, could name them off. Luckily, nothing has been knee, ankle, or whatever else. It's been a couple of times just like, hey, we need to see what's going on in there when it comes to my shoulder or my lower back or up in my cervical area when I had that stinging, constant, the muscle spasms that wouldn't go away. But all of that, they got good looks at it. Doctors were able to treat it, thank goodness. And I do feel right now better than I have in months. But the evidence comes from an MRI. If your doctor suggests you need an MRI or he wants to get one, make sure you suggest back to him. Please contact or refer me to Ideal MRI, you the patient. $497 or less every single time. State-of-the-art imaging. When I have had an MRI, I've gotten the disc sometimes when I've walked out the door, before I walked out the door, if I want to. And there's a portal. Your doctor and who you need to get it will get it at idealmri.com in the Central Texas marketplace off I-35 in Waco.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is 365 Sports. Check out the 365 Sports family of channels on YouTube.
365 Sports, and we appreciate those who have been a part of the show today, including Ari Temkin, Mike Scarborough, thanks to Seth Emerson, and Bruce Levine on the Stanley Cup playoffs, the dramatic Game 7 Saturday night. Stars open up, by the way, their second-round series against Winnipeg on Wednesday. We have been going over the schedules, and sometimes we had bumped in the road based on days off or sometimes just a lot going on. Craig Smoak in the Big Ten. We are going to get through this, Garrett, by Big 12 media days.
We'll find out.
Well, there's 18 teams, for God's sakes, and we get the Hoosiers of Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, we've been going around these schedules. We already did all of the Big 12 schedules. So for the Big 12 folks out there, we also had Ari Temkin earlier, and now we've made our way into the Big 10. We already got through the ACC as well. And, hey, man, it's the offseason. There's plenty of stuff going on, but it's always interesting to kind of look around the rest of the country, and that's what we've been doing. So we're making our way through the Big Ten slowly but surely, and we've now landed on Indiana. So this, for those just joining us, is just a look at the schedule. It's not a prediction. It's not a breakdown. It's just a casual convo, and I've found it pretty helpful in just kind of thinking maybe a bit about other teams and who has a hard schedule on paper and who doesn't. And so this has been an interesting little exercise. And for Indiana, it's a school that, quite frankly, I wouldn't be all that interested in talking about pretty much up until last year when they actually made themselves pretty interesting with the incredible year under Curt Cignetti that I don't think even the most diehard of supporters could have seen coming. A college football playoff appearance, just a great year overall for the Hoosiers. So that's what they're now, sitting and looking at as far as a bar for this year. And whether or not they can live up to it, well, let's get into that. So it ended 27-17 against Notre Dame in that interstate college football playoff game that the state of Indiana got, but for some reason the state of Texas didn't get, with SMU and Texas sitting right there.
Yep.
Nevertheless, I always have to bring that up because it still bothers me to this day. But that's where we last saw Indiana, was falling to the Irish in the playoff. Again, this is not a breakdown, but for example, you do have in place of Curtis O'Rourke, Francisco Mendoza coming in as one of their big gets this offseason. So he and the Hoosiers will open up on Saturday, August the 30th, and they will open up at home against Old Dominion, who's got some of the best uniforms in college football. I don't know how much you've watched them, but they've got a couple of pairs of uniforms that I really, really enjoy. I like their colors. I don't know. So when I think of ODU, I actually think of their uniforms these days. But Old Dominion up first for Indiana. Then on Saturday, September the 6th, one of the worst teams in all of college football should ensure that Indiana's 2-0, because I'll go ahead and give them that ODU game as well, as Kennesaw State will roll into Bloomington there on Saturday, September the 6th. On Saturday, September 13th, it is Indiana State, also at home. And then on Saturday, September the 20th, it is Illinois opening up Big Ten play, also at home. And then to close out the month of September, they got a game on August the 30th in those 4 September games. It will be their first road trip of the year, all the way almost into October. And it will be going to Iowa City to take on the Hawkeyes in game number 5. That's how they close out the month of September. All Saturday games, which is usually one of the things that I'll point out in this, but I'll go ahead and say it at the top. All Saturday games for Indiana. No Thursdays, no Fridays, none of that jazz. But yeah, only one road game in the first 5 games of the season. They should be 3-0, and then once you get up against Illinois and Iowa, that will remain to be seen. But that's how things start off on this first leg, and that Iowa game, that first road trip, will not only take them into the month of October, but it will also take them into their first bye week. So 5 games to start off with before their first break.
You know, the history of Indiana and what they're trying to do has never been done by them before. Last year had the run, 11 wins. They've never won more than 9. And then for them to do that, and I mean, they have been barren for 126 years. I wonder, the anticipation, is it too much? Signetti's obviously a great coach. He's done a great job. They have the transfer in that everyone's excited about from Cal. And you just wonder, can they do it again? I know you're talking about the schedule, but they have to start well. I look at that schedule, looks like there's no reason they shouldn't.
Yeah, I think they should be A-okay as far as those first 3 games go. And it's Big Ten play, as I said. Last year they got off to a really big start. I mean, they were 10-0 and then lost to Ohio State and then eventually to Purdue and then eventually to Notre Dame, and that was all she wrote. But they went on a big, long win streak that made things interesting there at the end and also got them into the college football playoff. But, yeah, I mean, I think people are jazzed up. They got a lot of reasons to care about Indiana football. They had very little reason to care for the most part in Bloomington, much less nationally. So, yeah, can they do it again? That's a big question for everybody, but that's the exciting part is they did it. So now can they do it again? It's much better. Can they do it at all? Being the question every single year.
Signetti's resume suggests that he is not just a one-year wonder, that he usually gets somewhere and keeps them at that level. Now, 11-2 level, I don't know.
And also in the Big Ten, I mean, absolutely. I don't know about all that. And they've had favorable scheduling as well. Looking at last year, that was a big talking point. So as they get into the month of October after that first bye week, they finally return October the 11th on the road at Oregon. So the Ducks on the road in some Big Ten action. Then October the 18th, home against Michigan State, be their first home game in nearly a month as they've got the trips to Iowa and Oregon and also the bye week. So the Spartans at home, then UCLA comes to Indiana on October the 25th. Then November the 1st at Maryland. Next week at Penn State on November the 8th. The following week back home to take on the Wisconsin Badgers and then finally get their second bye week. So they've got, what is that, a 5-6-1 schedule, which weird. I don't know if we've had that either. I haven't kept track.
I wonder if that was normal, but now with everything the way that it is, it seems like some teams have had these like 4-4-4, whatever. But that's a long haul till you get to that last one.
Yeah, so they've got that bye week after Wisconsin, so a string of 6 games, and then they will return on Saturday, November 29th, and that will also be on the road. So 3 of their final 4 games on the road, and they will play the Purdue Boilermakers to close things out in the regular season. So you're looking at 7 home games to 5 road games, but 2 Iowa, 2 Oregon. That's back-to-back. Bye week in between, but 2 Iowa, 2 Oregon, 2 Maryland, 2 Penn State, 2 Purdue. And you look at that compared to last year, they went to UCLA, they went to Northwestern, they went to Michigan State, and they went to Ohio State. I think this leans a little bit tougher. But they do avoid Ohio State this year. They avoid Michigan this year as well. And so that's notable right off top, as you're not playing either one of those teams. You don't get I guess maybe you throw Washington in there maybe as a team of interest, but you do have Penn State, you do have Oregon, you do have Wisconsin. So, and then, contenders like Iowa or Illinois that could be interesting as well. So there is the 2025 Indiana schedule, 5-6-1, 7 home, 5 away, and some interesting road trips for the first time as Big Ten members with Oregon.
Yeah, I remember last year when they had that nice start, and then they played at home against Nebraska and beat the living hell out of them. I mean, took their soul. I don't see them on their schedule, so that's good for Nebraska.
Yeah,
that Indiana's not on there, so that helps. Nebraska maybe, but then that means whoever else is in the Big Ten replaces them. I'm always one of these guys, and it's hard for me because I'll look at logos. I do, and I see Oregon and I see Penn State. With all due respect to Bielema at Illinois, with what they're doing elsewhere. Iowa, of course, is pretty rock solid. Wisconsin, we don't know who they are anymore. I see 2 logos on that schedule. Doesn't mean the other ones aren't pretty good, but I just see 2. That's a win for them, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think Illinois in week 3 will be interesting, and then from there on, the Big Ten schedule should be pretty interesting. I mean, it's not an impossible juggernaut-like schedule where they can't possibly win the way they won last year. I just think if they do that, then they're going to be a lot more convincing this time around, and it won't be like, do they deserve it because their schedule kind of sucks. They will have gone to the road and beaten Iowa. They would have gone on the road and beaten Oregon. They would have beaten, a combination of like Michigan State, Illinois. I mean, if they got to the point of last year, they'd also have gone on the road and beat Penn State. So, yeah, I think this is clearly a tougher schedule on paper. And I don't think there will be nearly as much questioning of the Hoosiers and their playoff ability or having earned a playoff spot if they were to go through this schedule the way they went through last year's schedule.
Yeah, they had Michigan and Ohio State both last year, both of them, and so they dodged that. Although Michigan, we don't know exactly where they are on a bump back year or not, but so you have. I wonder if anyone's, and I know we're going to go through all of them. Watch for this, Garrett and Craig, as we go through this. Does anybody get Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State? And the answer, if it's no, why not? Because it's an algorithm, right? So do they like place it where that can't happen? And if you're a team, you'd rather it not happen. That's for sure.
I didn't know what you wanted me to add there. Sorry, I didn't know if that was a question.
You don't have to add anything if you weren't paying attention to me.
No, I didn't know where you're going.
No, I was asking you. You wonder if any team will end up with all 3 of, and Oregon, and that doesn't include Oregon, or 3 of those 4 on their schedule. And then all of a sudden, if USC pops up because they got this nice recruiting thing going on, who knows? But that's a manageable schedule for Indiana. I agree with you.
I mean, I don't know. I Googled because I have no earthly idea on if somebody plays all 3 of those teams. I would imagine the algorithm probably prevents that. But if you swapped Oregon for one of those other 3, it would be the same thing, basically. So I don't know if anybody's got that combination of 3 out of those 4. That would be a really tough draw if you did. I find it to probably be impossible that anybody's got all 4 of those schools. That'd be something that you'd intervene on and go like, there's something wrong with the algorithm. Can't possibly play all 4 of those. But, I did see in one of the Google hits that came up as I was trying to figure that out. It was back in 2015, so everything's different. But I did notice that Michigan State beat Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State in the same season.
Damn.
But that was also 11 years or 10 years ago at this point, and a much different looking Big Ten.
You know who that
4
was?
More teams.
Was that the team that won the Cotton Bowl?
Probably.
Yeah, they were pretty good. They were pretty good.
And I don't know if anybody's done that since then or even played. I mean, I'm sure somebody's probably played all 3, but yeah, I have no idea. That was just something of interest that I didn't know, or maybe I forgot that 2015 Michigan State beat Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State all in the same season.
Like Oregon, I know but Oregon gets USC and none of the others. Of course, they're one of the others, so there's no Michigan, there's no Ohio State on their schedule. All right. Just kind of looking around, glancing around, see if they have anything else, Craig?
Nope, there's the Indiana schedule, and like I said, if they get through it the way they got through last year's, even with a loss, I think they will not need nearly as much convincing because they will have had some pretty big wins with this setup. Of course, it's all on paper. We'll see. We'll see how Mendoza and the crew do, but Indiana, definitely one of those programs that's of much greater interest now than they've been for, the majority of my life, quite frankly. But just in general, I think the most exciting they've been in Bloomington in a long time, so that's pretty cool for them. Yep. And we'll see if they can follow it up in year 2 with Cignetti.
And remember that game they lost to Notre Dame was at 27-17, but they got down early. Notre Dame had the long run. It wasn't like an absolute blowout, but it all felt that way because they controlled that game from the kickoff. All right, when we come back, Paul's not here till Wednesday, so no top 5, but Andrew Valade with the polls, and we'll look at the final results with those polls next on 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people you can count on for all of your automotive needs, and that's looking to get into a vehicle, looking to trade in your vehicle, looking to get your vehicle worked on. They can get all of that done for you over at Richard Carr. They've been serving Central Texas for 26 years, and they're celebrating anniversary sales savings going on right now. So, for example, you can save on all 2025 GMC Sierra 1500 SLE and SLT trucks in stock. Qualified buyers can save $8,750, nearly $9,000 off 2025 GMC Sierra 1500 SLE and SLT models in stock for qualified buyers. He was mentioning earlier he's driving around an electric vehicle. If you're looking for some excitement, a little electricity in your drive, then check out the Cadillac Lyriq, an EV that blows away the average everyday electric vehicle. Come test drive a Lyriq today and experience the difference over at Richard Carr's. Again, they're celebrating their anniversary sales savings. So whatever you're looking to get done, work on your vehicle, used vehicle, brand new vehicle, pre-owned, I guess the more proper term for the used vehicle, whatever it is, they are your one-stop shop. Locally owned, locally run, celebrating 26 years in business in Waco. Go do dealership with a business that gives back to the local community and deal with people you can count on at Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac.
Edward Jones Financial Advisors Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott understand these are difficult and changing times we live in, but they know how important your financial investments are to you. So is your financial advisor staying in touch with you and helping you navigate today's financial climate? Invest with Edward Jones Financial Advisors Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott, who invest their time and experience back to you and your money. And like coaching athletes, investing money is about time, patience, and encouragement. Contact Ben Erlinson at 254-759-8533. Brad Wilson's location at 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, and Cam Heathcott in Conroe. Edward Jones Financial Advisors, Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott, proud sponsors of 365 Sports. Edward Jones, making sense of investing, member SIPC.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers, everybody, the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
1, 2.
I'm in love with a man named Rudy. I'm okay with that. He knows exactly what I want. He keeps me coming back. He cooks breakfast, lunch, and dinner for me. does the dishes too. I'm in love with a man named Rudy, last name Barbecue. It sure is easy to fall in love with Rudy's tasty oak smoked barbecue.
Next in line. This is 365 Sports.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Ben Erlinson, who'll navigate you through today's financial climate. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
There's one final note, college football note. The College Football Playoff Selection Committee has added Nebraska AD Troy Dannon and Jeff Long. Remember him? Wasn't he the first spokesperson back in the day when the College Football Playoff had their selection committee? He was, I think, the spokesperson. He has been all over the place, Kansas, Arkansas, Pittsburgh, among others. And he is now a part. Those two are the newest members of the College Football Playoff Committee.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to say about Troy Dannon. I don't understand bringing Jeff Long back. Here's a guy who from the very get-go told you what the deal with the playoff was going to be when he started creating terms to justify their rankings week to week, like body clocks, which we haven't heard since then. Game control, which was BS. They just were making up things basically to massage the rankings the way they wanted to early on. But yeah, team had a long flight. They're not a logo. We're going to punish them for that. They didn't control the game. Like I just found that I found that era of the playoff to be new and fun and exciting, but also just full of a lot of BS when it came to justifying the rankings, quite frankly. But then he went on to Kansas, and I don't know. That was a glory period, right? Oh, wait, no, it was the whole disaster with Les Miles, and he got ran out of town as AD and basically got to leave on his own terms. Like I don't know. I'm just searching for what did he do to earn a spot on the playoff committee again?
He's been a part of college athletics for a long time.
That's like politics. So you just no matter what, you got your.
I don't understand why anyone would want to be that. Mac Rhodes. I asked him. I said, "Are you sure?" Because I don't know if anyone's going to like that person. You know, what's his name? Kirby Hocutt. What's his name? Texas Tech AD Kirby Hocutt was there. I don't know if that's like winning a bet that you don't want to win.
Long told CBS Sports' Dennis Dodd hours after meeting with Chancellor Douglas Girard at Kansas that his departure was not voluntary and confirmed he'd been relieved of his duties but allowed to save face by resigning. So he got fired, basically, but was allowed to save face because it's like politics where they never admit they did anything wrong and they just go about their business like nothing ever happened. And then he's, for all intents and purposes, not been with his school, and I don't know what he's been doing the last 4 years, which is why I say, for all intents and purposes, like he may be some assistant, associate, like consultant to compliance or something somewhere. But in terms of an actual title, he's not been with anybody since that Kansas disaster 4 years ago. So why is he on the playoff committee now? That's just my question. He's probably a nice guy or whatever, but I don't know what you did to earn that, quite frankly. So I don't love that choice, but whatever. Committee's going to do what they're going to do.
They're going to do what they ought to do. All right, Andrew Valade, who I sometimes, Garrett, you're next to him.
I hide him.
Do you sometimes forget he's there?
At times I can. Yes, he's very quiet.
All right, here's one of the poll results. So I didn't even know this. Aaron Judge is hitting .423. It's, of course, the 1st of May. Record-breaking stats, on pace for the greatest Major League Baseball season ever. Total votes over 100. And maybe, but it's still early. Nope, pump the brakes, and absolutely. Craig, if you had to vote for one of those three, which one would have been yours? I did vote in this.
I'd say maybe still early. I won't rule it out. I mean, that'd be foolish to just rule it out, although I think the numbers that you're talking about him needing to accomplish for the next 5 months, you can roll the dice and feel pretty confident about going against that. But, yeah, I'd say maybe it's still early.
Yeah, first of all, it'd be interesting also to have like the top 5 greatest singles ever, a single season ever. There's been very few people who've had the Triple Crown, but he's an amazing hitter. He's not just a power hitter. Obviously, a power hitter is going to have runs batted in, score a lot of runs. He's on a very good team. His batting average, though, is interesting. We know the history there. Ted Williams, the last one to hit. He hit .406 many decades ago. All right, Andrew, the next one. Thank you, Andrew, for doing these. Can USC's top 5 recruiting class? I mentioned them earlier. They've been hot on the recruiting trail. propel them back in the national title contention. It's almost like you forget they're there. Maybe still early, 49%. No, pump the brakes on that one, 34. And absolutely that this could propel them or should propel them into a national championship contender, which is 17%.
I'm going to say no, pump the brakes. I don't trust them to just jump right into the fray. I think they got a little bit of proving to do out in Los Angeles before I just buy them at face value. So yeah, I'd say no, pump the brakes. But I mean, I'm not ruling it out either.
Yeah.
I'm not buying in just yet.
I don't know. It's a great question. It's a very legitimate question because they have been basically like, oh yeah, remember them with all this the amount of publicity when Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams went out there, and it did okay. But it has been a disappointment. I think even Lincoln Riley would admit that, and those people who are paying his salary would like to see much more than that. Thank you, Andrew. Andrew Valade every day with a couple of different polls. I like it, appreciate it, and we always give the results at the end of the show. Tomorrow when we come back, as we are every weekday at 3 o'clock, we'll be here. Craig will be here. I'll be here. Both Garrett and Andrew will be here. Emery Winter right now working on 365 Sports Tonight, 10:30 on the local CW. Thanks to all of you. We appreciate it. We bring you what we try every day. We wake up to make it better. And thanks for your feedback, even if we disagree. I'm David Smoak. Have a great night. This is 365 Sports.